Okay, well, are we doing the immigration thing now?
Yeah, are we doing
These
immigration?
days.
I want to
Then
destroy
yeah.
some immigrants.
Yeah, dude.
In a debate. In a debate.
Honestly, hold on. Can I just start really quick? Because immigration is like the easiest thing to argue. Actually,
So true.
it's like the easiest one because here's the problem with immigration.
I'm not gonna like this debate. That's
No,
all I'm
no,
gonna
you.
say.
I mean, that's the more you dislike it, the more right Nick and I are, frankly. So,
hey,
so-
I'm not gonna say anything. All I'm gonna say is I'm not gonna like this debate.
well, you're not gonna like it, but that's fine. That means that we're right. That means we're right. Like, so here's. I mean, if I'm really coming at it from like a straight face, like really coming at it, here's the thing. There's no limiting principle to immigration if you're on the left. Because if you really believe that America is just like this, Nick, you talk about this a lot, the magic dirt theory. If we really believe that if the average immigrant from from San Salvador, El Salvador, right, is able to walk into Dallas, Texas and become a natural born American, right? There's no limiting principle. What does American mean? And then you start to get into like, okay, well, even if we afford a lot of rights and principles to native-born Americans, what does American mean, and what do the people mean? And if you're on the left, or frankly at this point, if you're even center left, you have no binding to what it means to be American. That's basically my take. Like, the left has no limiting principle to what it means to be American or what it means to have borders or anything like that. So I'm willing to go from there. I'm not going to interject, too harshly if someone jumps in, but it's like, what's the limiting principle on being an American? Because according to the left, if you're in a immigrant camp in Brownsville, Texas, on the border, you're facing horrible treatment and you deserve to be moved to the Des Moines, Iowa, to get a job at a factory to displace a white worker, and that's fine. So it's like, I don't really see how immigration policy currently benefits native-born Americans.
Well,
So
before
kind of my
we
problem
start
right now.
talking about immigration, I'd just like to see let's look at policy decision, right? So what's your policy, Nick, on immigration fully?
My policy on immigration.
Or Jordan and Nick, both of y'all.
The policy to become an immigrant, you said?
No, just policy in general. Like
immigration policy.
What would an America under President Fuentes look like when it comes to immigration?
Total dictatorship. No more immigrants.
Well, I mean,
Monarchy?
I want no, frankly, if you want all seriousness, I want net zero migration and I want deportations en masse.
Okay.
No, we want autocracy now.
I want no more immigrants. I would say zero.
I want
zip.
I want
Zero?
net zero
No.
and I want negative immigration.
Not
I
even
want
Albert
immigration-
Einstein.
I want
Not
immigration
even
going
wait,
opposite
not even European countries, Nick?
Nope.
No, all we need is birth rates going up and immigration going down.
Okay,
Hell
so
yeah,
how do you
yeah.
increase how do you increase birth rates?
Easily. Tax
motherhood.
incentives.
Hey,
Didn't work.
hey,
Yeah, it
hold
did.
on.
Hungary
Let me
did.
answer that.
Israel.
I'll answer that very quickly.
I'll bet you it's gonna be Hungary Orban. One sec, go ahead.
Ask Orban. Ask Orban.
Yeah, let me ask Orban. Which
Yeah,
Orban
tax
government? The
credits.
third? Wait,
Dude,
one
did you not see how
Let
I
me
own
finish.
Sam Kipling? I asked him, I said, do you think that it's an overstep of the government to incentivize child birth?
I don't
Like,
care
this
if
guy
it's an
was
overstep or not.
Normicon.
I care about if it works, right?
It does work. Oh my.
Okay. So do you know when Orban implemented this sort of like tax policy to help? Was it in his like Orban's had multiple governments, because of the way that the Hungarian parliament works. Like he's had about four things. So the fourth or the third Orban government, which one? So just so I know what I'm looking at.
Dude, I don't even know what you're asking. I support nationalist politicians. Like,
I'm telling you, it doesn't work. I'm telling you that sort of birth rate doesn't work.
Of course it does
Hell
work.
yeah, it
No,
works. We
actually,
can
of
course
raise
it
the
works.
birth
What are
rate.
you talking about?
Actually, what you see in Hungary's birth rate is actually a decrease.
No, it's not.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
That's literally untrue. Nick,
That's not
Okay.
true.
that's
I
literally
remember I searched this up when it came to.
It's not true.
Ask-
And
ask
anyway,
Duda in
Okay,
Poland.
the
and
current-
it's not
current
a
birth rate-
question of if we must. It is an imperative, and I'm not even joking that we raise the birth rates. And
Okay, yeah, I understand.
in any case, even if we did increase the birth rates, that doesn't mean that we need more immigration. I mean, the question about raising birth rates to me is really secondary or tertiary, because you look at like Japan as a good example. Japan's birth rate obviously collapsed, and even without the immigration, somehow they have remained a stable, safe, clean, traditional country. And so, I also think about like technological unemployment. It might be a good thing maybe that the population diminishes, but I don't think that the population diminishing necessitates that we replace the population with non-white immigrants.
And
well, it's not. Okay, wait, one second.
And MJ, at this
respond?
point, you still have not explained how mass migration would be a good response to lower birth rates.
I haven't even been.
You're trying to defend mass migration, but you've never said how it would be a good response to the ills of society that we're saying.
Well, first of all, we have to look at because when you're talking about decreasing immigration, right? And Nick, thank you for bringing up the Japan example, right? You're talking about decreasing birth rates, and the reason why birth rates matters to me, and I think like especially when it comes to replenishing our population, right? And why I think rather than being a secondary or tertiary thing, it's very much a primary thing, right? And the reason why that is because look at what happens in Japan. Right now, Japan's population, it's not about, our population is dying. It's about our population is getting older, right? And we're not replacing it with enough people that can actually support the elderly population. Like Japan is facing a demographic collapse as it reaches a fourth or fifth stage.
They're really not. People like you have been saying that since the mid-'70s. That Japan's population is going to collapse on itself, and the debt will collapse on itself.
I'm not the one saying this. This is the Prime Minister of Japan saying this. I'm not the one saying this. He put it as his policy initiative for two terms in a row. It's not some 17-year-old saying this. It's the Prime Minister of Japan. To move on to another point that I haven't been able to address fully, Hungary's birth rate, right? The famous birth rate. So
now we're moving from Japan to Hungary. Nice.
Yeah. The reason why we're moving from Japan to Hungary, right, is very simple, right? The reason why is because I'm trying to show y'all that this sort of like incentivization doesn't work, and as such, our only choice is immigration. So let's look at from 2016 to 2020. 2016, Hungary's birth rate was 9.49.
That's so funny.
2018.
He just said, Nick, did you see how he just slid that in there? He just said, the only solution we have is just mass migration. Like the only way we can ever do it is just if we just like
no.
our country.
I said immigration. I said immigration. I never said mass migration.
What I'm talking about is immigrants.
You're completely misquoting me.
Yeah, the only option we have is Pakistani rape gangs.
Dude, just let them in.
They're not going to take care of the elderly. They're going to kill the elderly.
Exactly.
We're gonna bring them over, and they're gonna murder the elderly, just like in Detroit in that nursing home. It's gonna be like a boxing match.
They will punch your grandmother, and you're gonna be watching
like Ray Rice.
film, and you're just gonna be "Yo, I signed the bill."
Ray Rice in the nursing home.
Nick Fuentes, what did you say about Detroit in the nursing home?
Like that Detroit nursing home. I know that guy was a patient, but you see that kind of elderly abuse all the time from nurses and other aides. And everybody knows that. I mean, the problem is they're not us. So, I mean, yeah, they might be able to support Social Security or something.
Hey, Nick.
But fuck
that. Let's circle back to the topic a little.
Wait, can we be? I just want to know what the patient. What did he do to the elderly?
Oh, you don't know what that is?
Oh, this guy.
No, I don't.
This black guy was just like using this white person in the nursing home as like a punching bag, just like brutally punching the shit out of this. I think it was a guy, or I don't know if it was a guy.
Yeah, it was a guy. It was a guy.
Just battering this guy. And like, it's no secret that immigrants, even white immigrants, Polish immigrants, especially in Chicago, but Polish, Hispanic, Central American immigrants, and blacks often end up working as like nannies or in nursing homes. I've seen it firsthand in hospitals, and they are abusive. I mean, this is just a fact. And so, the idea that like, I mean, I don't know if you mean literally like take care of them and send them to nurses.
The thing is with the Detroit thing is that Governor Gretchen Whitmer actually had the executive order to put those patients in the nursing home. So I wouldn't really say.
Wait, what
it would be?
Hold on, but Nick.
So in Michigan,
Nick had a very good point on his show tonight. Nick talked about the fact that you can't import tens of millions of migrants into the first world from the third world over the span of 50 years, inject them with the ideology of anti-whiteness, and then expect them to act civilly towards whites.
Okay, but
like, why would you expect that thing to happen? If you tell non-white people when they enter this country that whites have always wronged them, have always hated them, have always enslaved them, have always beat them, why would you think it's like some weird anomaly that they start beating them when they start taking care of them at an old age?
Okay, can we?
And then when white people become the minority, we think it's just gonna flip. Like, it's not gonna flip.
Yeah,
it's just gonna get even worse. It's gonna get even worse.
Don't be
I'm
surprised
gonna be a rapper
when it turns to South Africa.
I'll be
Dude,
a rapper.
Here's the understanding.
Nick, it's fine.
Wait, but aren't you guys talking like immigrants? Was the black guy that was beating them? Was he an immigrant?
No, he was non-white.
Well,
okay.
That's
I
the
mean,
point.
I mean,
That's
it's
the
kind of
point.
relevant.
No,
but-
it's not relevant because you're misunderstanding
It's
the
really
point.
not.
The point
Okay,
is
what's
that
the point?
you're being sort of like snarky right now, but the point is this: is that we import foreign people, and the point is that there are considerations outside of the social safety net and outside of this like pyramid that we're trying to construct of like a giant base of taxpayers to support the social safety net or social security. The point is that the people that are coming here, if they're quite literally going to be physically abusing our elderly, then what does it matter if they're paying for the social security? I mean, obviously I'm not I'm being a little bit facetious, but that is symbolic and that is emblematic of the problem with mass migration. You might very well say that we're going to bring over Hispanics and they're going to pay for the Social Security for the current retirees and their benefits. And I understand that. But you also are ignoring the giant civilizational transformation that occurs when you transition to a different racial demographic. I mean, there's serious consequences to this, and to say that it's like, oh, well, we're just going to replace these people with these other people in a different color. Like, there's serious consequences to that.
Okay, Nick Fuentes, I'm just really curious on why you used the Detroit example in particular, considering he was not an immigrant.
Because he was non-white.
But the thing is, we have to understand. We have to understand the culture around Detroit. Right? So you understand that Detroit's a very violent place, right?
It's not, but it's not just an only Detroit thing. I mean, this is something that in all these sectors.
Yes. Okay, but in regards to Corona, the highest surge.
Oh, but we're not talking about Corona. This video, I believe, was from like before Corona.
Was because of Corona.
That's not true. This predated Corona.
Dude, if it was recently, it was most definitely Corona because
it predated Corona. I'm telling you, it predated Corona.
To go to nursing homes.
It was an old video. It was an old video. You don't even know what you're talking about. It was an old video.
Like, the whole point of this is bringing multiple immigrants to create a consumer society.
I genuinely don't understand why that basis is there. So
we're explaining it to you.
Let me shift the argument off of, oh, Dearborn, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a shit about that, right? Let's talk about immigration, right?
It wasn't in Dearborn. It was in Detroit.
Or Detroit or whatever. I just heard Michigan and heard D.
We are talking about immigration. We're talking about demographic change.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I want to talk about specifically.
And
right?
the care of your elders decreases.
Jordan, I've been trying to talk this whole time, man. Please let me talk.
It's an independent issue.
So when it comes to immigration, right, Nick, I just want to understand why no immigration. Just enlighten me then.
I told you, it's because we are in the middle of a giant demographic transition. It's not. Number one, I should point out, we have brought in more than 60 million immigrants since the 1965 Hart-Celler Immigration Act. So the volume of immigrants is too high, no matter what way you cut it. Whether they're coming from Europe or they're coming from anywhere, there's just too many immigrants. You can't assimilate them. I don't think assimilation is even possible from a lot of these places.
Correct.
But there's no way that they're going to adhere to a new culture. There's no way that they're even learning the language or anything else for that matter. The other thing is that it's totally disruptive to the economy. And usually to me, the economy is secondary. But if we're just talking about volume, there's just way too many people in this country in order for wages to rise. I mean, we know that the people that are coming in. I mean, there's a lot of family-based immigration, but a lot of the immigrants have come in and they've totally destroyed the job market for high school graduates or people without a college diploma. But primarily more than anything, and I don't want to get into the weeds on that, the primary reason we need no more immigration is because of the social and cultural consequences of a total demographic change, totally changing the racial composition of the country. It's just got to stop.
Can you explain to me those social and cultural issues then?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The people that are coming over here are not Americans. You know, specifically if we're looking at Latin American immigration, Jason Richwine did a paper about this. If you're looking at the average IQ of the Hispanic immigrants coming over here, it's like 85. But it's not even an IQ argument. It's about the fact that when you bring people over here, whether they're high IQ, low IQ, they're bringing over a culture that is alien and foreign and basically immutable. The non-white people that we're bringing in cannot perpetuate the European culture that created America.
Nick,
so what creates culture?
Nick, what about the Cubans that went to Miami?
Right,
yeah, when their second generation became the same exact thing that they were not, and voted on the left and kept just continuation of destruction of this country.
Nick, but the Cubans, man, come on, man.
I'm not even making that point, Nick. So what would you define as culture then?
Culture is a very expansive thing. You know, a lot of people take culture to mean that it's just like music or dancing or fine art or something like that. But culture is actually very broad, and it's very deep. You know, culture is something as simple as like how a people treats its women. A culture is its sense of humor. Mannerisms, body language. It's things like, what is your tolerance level for people that disagree with you? What does your work ethic look like? You know, culture is something that, between races, you're going to see differences that are large and small. And, or maybe I should say, more properly stated, some things are going to be seen and some things are going to be unseen. But that would be what I would define as culture.
So, I mean...
Okay, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you say that there's one American culture? Would you say that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So would you like put Mormons in Utah under that umbrella, along with Bostonians,
yes,
New Yorkers? Okay. I mean, personally, I'd see Mormonism as like, extremely different to let's say a Protestant or Catholic, if you take it, those values.
Well, it's not to say that there are no differences, but it is to say that, strip away maybe regional things or, again, some of the trappings, and you do have a discernible monoculture. I think the more appropriate question would be, are the differences between Bostonians and Mormons equal or lesser to the differences between Bostonians and Nigerians? Clearly we would say that there are more things that Mormons in Utah have in common with Bostonians in Boston than Bostonians have in common with Nigerians. And that's the point. The point is that there is a discernible monoculture, and I Nick, would even go as far as to say yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me get this straight. Was your stance on immigration that there should be none whatsoever?
Net zero migration.
Yeah,
net zero. So
with deportations.
Okay,
yeah, massive
so you said
deportations.
Frankly, I don't see why that's outlandish to anyone. But
look,
it's not that it's outlandish.
Okay, so you said if these cultures were similar, then similar enough in how they value things, that would be a
but they're not, and they never will be.
Okay, well, I mean,
mass
you can obviously gauge
Tree of Liberty,
things.
mass assimilation is not possible.
Jordan, you gotta stop it. Jordan, you gotta stop interrupting, bro.
I'm not saying that. I never made that, claim.
Mass assimilation
but
is not
I've
possible.
never made that claim. You don't need to keep on saying it, bro. So what I'm saying is, if you said that the comparison between cultures and seeing how these values, how similar they are, is a substantial argument to say it's American or not, then we can look at cultures outside of the borders, the geographical borders of America, and apply those same cultures to those values, right?
What are you even saying?
So if a culture had the similar values to, let's say, Mormonism or Bostonian culture or New York culture, but they're outside of America, even though these same values were similar to these American values, would you say they wouldn't be as candidates for immigration?
But they're not. I mean, they're not. The culture. Well, you want to know what the culture is like in Africa? They will go into electrical transformers. They'll break them open, and they'll use the oil inside of them to cook their chicken. That's the culture in Africa.
Nick,
did I use Africa as an example? You said net zero immigration, so that would include Europe, right? That includes Europe.
Yeah,
right?
That includes Europe.
So including Western Europe, right?
Yeah. No more immigration. We've got enough.
I just watched Audio Africa for the first time, and it was fire.
So Western Europe, whose cultures, they share similar values as America, right?
Yeah.
And you said that because Mormons and Bostonians have, substantial, or their values are similar, they're fine. They can be American. But if there's some, Western European culture that shares these same values, these values are similar, then they want to be, candidates for immigration.
I think that eventually.
Okay, but regardless,
where you're labeling the problem was the difference in values. But if that's the case, the difference of values doesn't matter. So you're basing it on something else.
No, wrong. Eventually, I think Europeans will be candidates to become immigrants. What we're talking about is right now, and like I said earlier, we're all. It's context denial to say that. That to ignore the fact that we have just brought in more than 60 million immigrants since 1965. And the point is to say that, even at this point, if we were to bring in European immigrants, I think that would be that would be maybe the least disruptive place that we could bring in immigrants from. And I would be unopposed to bringing in European immigrants on the grounds of culture. But the reason that I say no European immigrants even now is because we have brought in tens of millions of immigrants from other countries, and for a variety of reasons, it's a good reason to not bring in any more immigrants. I think that Europeans absolutely pass the smell test when it comes to culture. I mean, they absolutely do. Europeans are the ones that have been assimilated and make up the modern, I believe it's an ethnicity of white Americans. But I think at this point, bringing in Europeans, I think they're going to vote liberal. I think they're going to vote Democratic. And the other thing is, I think that they're going to take jobs at this point. So, but that is a very tiny percentage of the immigrants that are coming in. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about largely Hispanic and Asian immigration. Europeans make up a very tiny percentage of that, and that's not the problem. That's not the major part of the problem that we're talking about. So you're trying. It would be much better if you could just state your point instead of this laborious process of you are asking these sort of like inane questions to build up to a point that isn't even salient.
Which makes no sense to me whatsoever. And
okay, well, elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my point on any of this. So I'd like to actually get into a debate now, instead of just dancing around points, right? And so I see the immigration debate personally on three planes. The first is the morality plane, the second is the policy plane, the third is the economic plane, right? So when we look at the morality, Nick, do you believe that in the idea of innocence until proven guilty?
Yeah, in a U.S. court of law.
Yeah, but do you believe it as a good moral code?
No, I don't think that's actually even a moral judgment, actually.
You wouldn't say that, the idea that we shouldn't judge people based on something that, the entire
No, I don't think it's immoral. I don't think it's immoral to prejudge or to be prejudiced, not even a little bit.
I fundamentally disagree on that point.
Well, tell me why. Why is it immoral to be prejudiced?
Because the argument there is that you're revoking the individuality of the person just because of the acts of either A, a minority, or B, a majority of the group.
No, I'm not revoking their individuality. What does that even mean? Revoking their individuality? They're still an individual. You just don't consider. Here's the problem: is because if I'm walking down the street at night. The proverbial walking down the street at night argument, and I see even just a man. If I, forget about the color, creed, whatever. If I'm walking down the street at night and I even see a man as opposed to a woman coming up behind me, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to prejudge that person is a threat. I'm not revoking their individuality.
No, because okay. Well, in that discussion, right, you are operating on limited knowledge, right? When we're talking about
we're doing that with immigration.
No. Because when we're talking about the immigration plan, we are talking about you have knowledge on these people. These are applicants, right?
No, you don't. What knowledge do you have? People coming from Africa, they don't. What information do you have on them? They write on fucking leaves.
Do you?
Okay. What? Anyways, I'm not even going to address that point, right? So, first of all, I believe that it is wrong to prejudice based on the individuality of a person, right? Because it's 100% wrong to prejudice, because again, your idea of saying, oh, you're not removing the individuality is completely flawed, because you are essentially removing the individuality of the person by pretty much stating, oh, because you are part of this group, because you must believe what this group believes, or you must follow what this group follows, you're removing the individuality of that person. I'm North African, right? That doesn't mean that I'm going to be like some sort of terrorist or etc., right? Like that's what I mean by that's wrong, right? Because you're removing the individuality of the person. Like the individual actions of the person should matter more than the group person. And why that's important, right? And why I believe that is important is because, again, is culture ever objectively true? 100% objectively true. What do you say, Nick?
Well, what does that mean? Is culture true? What kind of question even is that?
Are the cultural factors, right, of like different culture groups, are they 100% objectively true at times? You know
what does that mean? How can a what
like
true in what sense?
Elaborate on that, MJ.
Yeah. Does every single person in the culture group fall under that, like under the tenets of that culture?
And what?
Like for example, like let me give you an example, right? Like
not all X are like that. Not all blacks are like
right?
X. Right, sure.
So how can you implement laws on something that isn't objective? How can you implement laws on something that's subjective, right? Because again, you remove the individuality of the person from the equation, right? Because you're saying, Nick, what's your saying, right? In your world, in a world of President Fuentes, right? For example, Muslims, right? You'd say Muslim immigrants shouldn't be allowed because of their
Muslim.
How they treat women, right?
No. I think that's one of the few bright spots. I think Muslims shouldn't be in because they don't believe in God.
My God.
Wait, Muslims should be in because of what?
Because they don't believe in the true God. They don't believe in Jesus Christ.
Yo, based.
Okay. Then that's a whole.
Here, I want to get back to the kind of argument, the analogy you gave, the man on the street. Let's assume you can make prejudice about him. I mean, that's just something that happened. Do you have the right to put positive action on him based on that prejudice? Do I have the right to assume he's a threat and act on that assumption of threat before he actually poses a threat?
Well, it depends. It depends on the situation.
Well, he's not doing anything, right? You just have the character say that he's a man, and men make up like XYZ percentage of the prison population. So can I do a positive action on him?
I'm not going to let him into my house.
Yeah, you're not going to you're not going to let people open churches in your house.
I don't know what that's supposed
to
be.
If you're trying to compare a house to a nation.
I am, and I think we as a people are sovereign over our land, and we actually have exceptional powers when it comes to this, because when you're talking about citizens in our country, I apply a different set of standards to our citizens and interactions on an individual by individual basis than versus a country. Because when you're talking about a country, number one, you're talking about a state, and a state's number one, you're talking about morality. The number one moral obligation of the state beyond everything else is to protect its people. So that is just very special consideration. Moreover, a state is not dealing with individuals. A state is dealing with, when we're talking about immigration, millions and millions, tens of millions of people over a decade or over several decades. And so when it comes to that, actually, we do have to generalize. And when it comes to a nation protecting its people, you do have to take special care to protect them. The other thing is that the act of immigration, if you want to talk about positive action, the act of immigration itself is a positive action. I mean, I don't want to go over and bomb potential immigrants in other countries, but I do think that we can prevent them from coming here. Immigrants have no right to come here. They're not entitled to come here. This is our country, and we as a people are sovereign over it.
That's kind of a socialistic viewpoint, I would say, that everybody owns the land.
I'm not saying we own the land. We're sovereign over the land, which means that we as the people get to determine what goes in this land. I mean, we're a constitutional republic. A republic means that the people are sovereign, not the state, but the people. And the people, obviously, through the representatives in the state, get to decide what goes here, who comes in, who comes out, what our standards are for how you do that.
Well, that wouldn't be a right. That would be a permission. That wouldn't be a right.
What wouldn't be a right?
You're saying they wouldn't have a right to come over here. That wouldn't be a right. That
would be a permission. They do not have a right. They do not have a right to come here.
No, they have the right to move. They have the right to.
They don't have a right to come here.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they have the right to move, freedom of action, right?
To move
where?
But
what you're saying is that they don't have anywhere they choose to, right? But you're saying if we live it as a nation and collectively say they do not have the right, you're not speaking about rights. You're just talking about permission. So majority of the country says they want to.
They do not have the right to come here. I mean, what are really? I don't even like rights talk. I mean, what are really rights?
That's a different conversation.
Rights don't exist. No
Okay.
Well, I mean, if there's no one to enforce or recognize them.
Nick, you brought up protection, right? You brought up protection. Protection from what? I just like to ask. Protection from what?
Protection from, protection from the idea that I'm not even talking about crime, although I could, but I'm talking about protecting our country from a transformation. I look at like a neighborhood. I look at like Little Italy as a good example of this in Chicago. This is like a native neighborhood in Chicago, obviously not like indigenous, but I look at a part of the city like that. It's several neighborhoods in the city, and they've been steamrolled by Hispanic immigrants over the course of the past 30 or 40 years. And like that's happening across the country. Forget even that example. Our native culture and the character of this country is being steamrolled over by other people. And we, as a country, have a right not just to protect our people and like their safety and well-being, but also to preserve and protect their communities, their neighborhoods, their schools, their workplaces, protect them from competition, protect them from threats to their heritage, protect them from threats to their life and their well-being. So a state, it's forget even protection. It's really about looking out for the best interest. Protection is true, but it's more about
by that regard,
looking out for advancing the interest of the people.
Hold up.
Oh boy.
I got a question.
The leaf man.
God, Verbal's here.
Hold up. Hey, Nick Fuentes. I remember. I think I was watching one of your videos, and you said that you get your idea of rights from the Aristotelian perspective, right?
I'm not sure I ever said that.
Because all right. So you didn't. What about? Or am I mistaken with Thomas Aquinas?
I don't think I said that either.
All right, just scratch what I said. So you don't believe in rights because, or do you?
It's not that I don't believe in rights. It's just that, talking in terms of like, oh, you have a right to like move. I mean, to me, this is just kind of like a useless abstraction. Oh, like in general, like what does that even mean? I mean, if you have a right to like walk through the jungle where a tiger is, I mean,
so
rights exist within a country.
It's like Nick, the best example. Hold on, hey, verbal. We've talked a lot of times, verbal, right? So the best example Nick gave that I saw live that he gave one time was about Rashard Brooks when he got tased, right? And it was after the Hotep debate with Hotep Jesus and all those people, and they were all debating like autistically, like, did Rashard deserve to die? And it's like, no one deserves to die in that situation, but it's like you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And it's like, yeah, if you wrestle a cop for their taser, you will win the stupid prize of like getting tased and like you have a heart attack. It's like it's not that hard to like calculate. It's really not rocket science. So it's like, yeah, if I fight a cop for his taser or for his 9mm and I get shot, it's like, yeah, maybe I die, but it's like, did I deserve to die? Maybe not necessarily, but it's like I played a very stupid game and I won a very stupid prize.
I think the question
really not difficult there.
I think people confuse deserve when they talk about this. Usually, what they mean is was it justified? So I don't really see the relevance of your analogy as far as the what you're talking about. But there's nothing much to say about what you just said. Like, where do we go from here?
Let's venture more back into immigration. We're kind of getting off into the weeds.
Yeah, we're definitely getting off topic because I really want to talk about policy and economics, right? Which, by the way, Nick's made some claims about the economics of immigration, which are completely wrong on every single regard. Like, I mean, I don't like. I'd love to see where he comes to the idea that economics that we are economically hurt by immigration in any way, shape, or form.
I could, yeah, very easily. I mean,
go ahead.
Here's the problem with here's the problem typically with when people talk about the economic benefits of immigration is it's a question of who benefits from the immigration. And this is another problem with a lot of the economic literature is you have to specify who benefits because, of course, there are a lot of people in this country and, we have to look at the ways in which people are benefiting and who's benefiting. And what we find is that when immigrants come here, yes, it is true they add value to the economy. Yes, it is true that they add a surplus to the economy. But if you break it down, the value that they add to the economy is about $2.1 trillion. The value that they add, or the benefits of that value that accrue to the native people in this country is about $50 billion. So in other words, immigrants add $2.1 trillion to the economy, but the benefits of that, $2.05 trillion of that, accrues to the immigrants themselves. And moreover, if you're looking at, winners and losers when it comes to immigration, the people that benefit, the natives that benefit in this country from that are firms. The two groups that benefit from legal immigration are the firms that employ immigrants and the immigrants themselves. The people that lose are the American worker. And that's from George Borjas, and he's gone into detail about
I have a question.
Not everybody can win.
For those 2.05 trillion.
What's your question?
Well, it's just that I'm just wondering how does it benefit the immigrants? Where exactly is it going? Those 2.05 trillion that benefit the immigrants specifically? Are they just getting
that
in
would be a shit ton of money for a bunch of immigrants. 2.0 trillion to what? 600,000 maybe 800,000 people would be crazy.
800,000 people. We're not talking about annually. I'm not talking about annually. And anyway, 600 more, dream on, man, more like a million plus immigrants. But in any case, we're talking about value added to the economy. It's like if you're bringing an immigrant in and they're an employee, the immigrant that they're adding is, the value that they're adding through their labor or something like that, or they're buying a house. So, and the point is that, if they're only adding $50 billion, you're bringing in millions and millions and millions of people, the benefit that they add to the actual native people is actually pretty marginal. It's not a difference maker is the point. It's basically a wash. Yeah. And if you're looking at winners and losers even within that number, it's the firms that are winning. Not necessarily because. Sorry. I'm sorry, Sap.
I was just going to ask, how far along are they tracing the money, the 2.05 trillion, in direct benefits or reinvestment into the economy, reinvestment through consumption?
Well, I mean, obviously, they're not calculating how money is rippling across the economy. But the point being is that it's a pretty simple point. It's just that when immigrants are coming here and they add economic value, it's like, well, of course, insofar as immigrants are going to earn money and spend money, the economy will grow. But if you're dividing that by one extra person, I mean, do you get the picture? It's like, how is that? We're trying to determine if immigration works for America as it is. Adding immigrants and immigrants adding value to this country for themselves, they add into the denominator as well as the numerator. I mean, that's not really a question of our value. And then at that point, the question has to be asked, if they're not adding significant value, if the value that's added is marginal, then you have to begin to think about these other consequences. And I think you have to think about them regardless. But at that point, the question is, is it worth it to bring in, to cause all this disruption, in other words, this transformation in exchange for $50 billion? I mean, it would be a viable question, I think, if it was, a huge number, if the value that they added was huge. But, and it would be a question. But at this point, when it's basically a wash, overall for the entire country.
What value would be huge for you?
Well, I don't know, but it doesn't matter because that's not the case.
But for example, I'm just looking at some economic literature, or rather economic study in front of me right now, right? Which is done, if I'm not mistaken, if you want the source on it, it is done by the American Progress Institute, right? So they looked at immigration, right? And they looked at how do immigrants benefit us right now? They benefit us about $690 billion increase in wages, in income, right? Of immigrants, rather not of immigrants, of citizens, like original native citizens in this country. So would you say that that's a benefit? If that's only the income benefit, that's not even looking at the other benefits that could come through.
But that's impossible. Immigrants don't raise wages, and whatever study
it's not
you're
wages,
pull out of your ass.
Income.
Income. Well, what do you think?
That's differentiation.
Is? What do you think income is?
Well, income isn't necessarily wages.
Okay. Well, what is it for the vast majority of people?
Well, income can come through so many different things, but regardless, right? Okay. And like what you're looking at right now, Nick, is
that's ridiculous, immigrants. Though I mean, you go to American Progress Institute.
Yeah, that's what the study says.
Well, I went to imright.com, and the study conclusion says I'm right, and therefore I'm right. I mean, like, you can pull a study that you just found on Google, but, you know, I would have to read over the methodology and everything. If you look at the studies from Borjas, he specializes in immigration. He's a Harvard immigration economist. He's an immigrant himself. And, you know, if you read his book, it's called We Wanted Workers. He goes over the methodology and how if you look at just about any immigration study, you can take the same data and depending on your methodology, you can end up with wildly different outcomes. And typically and often you'll find that, you know, a lot of these think tanks, which are backed by big business or backed by the political left, they will produce results that support the claim that immigration adds to the economy. And they'll do a variety of tricks like that. You know, for example, if you look at welfare, they'll break down welfare by the individual as opposed to the household. If you look at like different studies on local markets where you've had a surplus or you've had a surge of immigration, you know, they will look at people that are like in high school. They'll look at people that aren't even eligible in the workforce. And you know, there's all kinds of ways that studies can be distorted. That's why it's very important to not just like throw up a study that says like, oh, hey, well, you know, this study says that immigrants increase wages. I mean, if you're the supply and demand guy, then tell me how increasing the supply of labor will somehow increase the price. I mean, we know that when you get more of something,
because at the
you're
same
going
time,
to get a lower price.
Because you assume there's assumptions with the supply and demand, especially. So first, you assume that the kind of labor supply is uniform, right? You know, uniform in terms of skills and uniform in terms of necessity, in terms of like, can the pie grow in terms of labor necessity if you have increased demand? And that's what I thought with the Borjas study was I thought it would be interesting if he looked more into the ripple effect of how money interacted further, right? How, you know, capital investment, stuff like that affected people who are native here. And when it comes to the labor market, you usually have people in the United States, native born citizens who are in the middle of the labor market. They have middle skills, and then people who are coming from immigration, they are coming from either extremely low skill or extremely high skill. So they aren't necessarily competing for the exact same jobs. And then when they do come here and they create a demand, they're creating a job or two for every job that is quote unquote taken. So you might see the direct effects, right? But you're not looking at the indirect job creation that comes from it.
But I don't see how that makes sense when, you know, in a lot of cases you see, for example, with like H-1B visas, and, you know, those are like temporary work permits, but you know, often they become permanent. You've got tech companies that are bringing in people to do the same jobs that Americans do. Often you'll have the American employee training the replacement, and then, you know, Amazon will hire that employee at a much lower wage. And, you know, you could look at this with H-1B. You could look at it with high-skilled or low-skilled. You know, I just don't, and to me, this is really just like basic and simple stuff. You cannot have an endless, and it is endless when you're talking about Mexico and Central America and China and India. You said it earlier. They've got 1.5 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India. They've got, you know, 150 or whatever million people in Mexico. It's an endless supply of labor. However much you need, it will be there, and it will be expendable. And wherever they're coming from, they're going to earn a higher wage in America doing just about anything than they would be at home doing the exact same thing or something else. And so at that point, it becomes a question of, you know, if you have an endless supply of labor, what's the incentive? Is your incentive to hire Americans or to raise wages, or is it to hire cheap foreigners and cut wages when you absolutely can and when you have limitless potential to do so? I mean, to me, that is, and obviously it's limited by certain things. You know, it's limited by the government only gives out so many H-1Bs and they cost a little bit of money. But the point being is that, you know, I just don't, it just doesn't make much sense to me, the idea that like, oh, well, you're going to get this huge supply of labor, but actually it doesn't decrease the price because of, you know, like reasons, because, well, you know, indirectly, or, you know, the money that Amazon saves from hiring a foreigner is going to be reinvested, and I don't know, the gains are going to be so great. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying that this theory is absolute on its own. I was saying that this kind of thing I put out there would explain the kind of studies that MJ was bringing up.
Yeah,
explain why
that,
this would happen.
That's the methodology that you were asking for before, about like that's why those sort of studies would go up, right? And like, here's my understanding, right? If we can see an economic benefit from immigrants, right, and if on top of that we can concede, right, that immigrants really, like, overall immigration does not increase crime rates, right?
No, I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
Disagree with why? Why?
I think that immigrants absolutely bring more crime, and the only reason why you might find a
Illegal
study that
immigrants in the
says
United
otherwise.
States, Wait,
yeah, wait. Before you're going to say that, I just want to disprove what you're about to say. If you're comparing it to the overall American population, you're right. But if you subtract blacks from that number, then you're wrong. And therein lies the difference.
Why would you do that?
Why would you subtract blacks from that number?
Because blacks are exceptionally, their criminality in the black community is exceptional compared to whites
why does that
or any other demographic. Because we don't want to bring in people. Because we don't want to bring in people.
They're still Americans, my guy. I don't really see your
point. Yeah, totally true. When they're burning the fucking flag and they're wearing African garb. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're trying to establish that there's...
But the point being is this. We don't want to bring people over that are comparatively less criminal than the most disproportionately criminal population in the country or arguably in the world. We want to bring in people that are comparatively low crime to the majority.
But wouldn't black people be in this uniform American culture though that you established earlier?
No, absolutely not.
Well,
absolutely
why wouldn't
not.
That people, especially who have been here since like
18?
Well,
I explained it earlier because that actually proves the point. They've been here for 500 years. Some of them, or 400 years. It's 400 years, I guess 1619. That's a new thing. So almost 400 years on the dot. And what we find is that not only do blacks have like a totally different culture than us, and they just do. But they don't even identify with us. And that's the biggest component of assimilation is, sure, they speak English, but, I mean, obviously they have their own slang. They have their own dialect. I almost just said it right there. They have their own dialect. I almost said it right there. They dress differently. They listen to different music. They have a totally different culture. And what's more is they don't even see themselves as an archetypal American. That is why you see like 60%, I don't even know what it is for blacks, I think it's like 80-some% support for a group like Black Lives Matter. That's why they support things like taking a knee for the national anthem. That's why they support taking down statues of Washington and Jefferson. That's why like 85% of them believe that Trump is racist, and 97% of them vote for Barack Obama. It's because they're not assimilated.
Yeah, well, Nick, then aren't you kind of establishing that this American culture is just, again, I'm not calling you anything, it's just old European culture at that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, well, that would have been helpful. Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, a different point I'd like to make is then let's look at specific crime rates. Like, for example, child sex, right? Child sex crimes, right? Like violation, child rape. Right? If you look at the United Kingdom, for example, which is the thing that I want to bring up because everybody loves bringing up, what is it again? The Pakistani rape gangs, right? If you look at rape in general in the United Kingdom, right? The CEOP said that offenders in these cases often act in groups, which is true, right? But it also said that compared to the proportion of Asian people in the general population, they actually do less, right? And when you actually look at total crime rates, most of it is committed by white people, which actually characterize about 70% of all rapes in the region, right? Like I guess that's just an example of showing like this is comparative to the white population in the UK, not the black population, not the African population, not the anything population. We're comparing the white population.
We're not talking about the UK or child rape gangs in the UK. We're talking about America.
Well, no. I'm just saying that's just an objective truth right there, right? Because
I don't know enough about the United Kingdom, but I would say that that's just completely bullshit. I mean. And then this is the problem is we clearly
Wait, you don't know enough about it, but you call it complete bullshit?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's why. Because we all the time, I mean, we see what's going on in these countries. I mean, you see it in the news, you see it all over the place. And then, you're going to have liberals that will come up and say, well, according to this study, you literally cannot believe what you're seeing. I mean, these Pakistani rape gangs, it's talked about everywhere and all over Europe too, by the way. It's gotten so severe in like Germany and Sweden, they don't even report the statistics anymore. They don't keep track of race, and in some countries they don't even publicly report them anymore because it's so severe.
I'm showing you the statistics with regards to race. So
and like I said, I'm not completely familiar. Like I said, I'm not completely familiar.
So
with
if you're not completely familiar on something, then why are you trying to characterize an assumption based on something
because I know it's wrong.
So
Nick, I'm not completely familiar with the news stories you're talking about, so we're just I know they're wrong, bro.
Correct.
Okay, so are we just back on stage one where we're at a middle ground? Pakistani rape gangs don't exist because I don't know enough about what it is?
No, wrong. They do exist.
Well, I don't know.
But we're not talking about
Pakistani
Pakistani rape gangs, so we have to talk about America. I mean, I happen to disagree on that, but the question is about immigration in America.
No, the reason why I'm saying is that very same point could be then translated back into America. I haven't looked into.
No, it can't. No, it can't, because you're talking about child rape with Pakistani rape gangs, which is totally their own problem. If you're looking at the incarcerated population in America, illegal immigrants, it's wildly disproportionate for the population that they are. And moreover, and as I said earlier, if you're looking at the crime data, the reason why you're wrong, and why I said I knew you were wrong before I even cited this statistic, this is what everybody says, well, if you compare immigrants to the native population, immigrants commit less crime. And that is only because we have this dramatic outlier that blacks, black men in particular, are, roughly 5 or 6% of the population, and they're committing more than half of the violent crime.
What about this, Nick? Okay, I understand. Let's accept your point, right? Let's accept your premise saying that immigrants commit less crimes proportional to their thing, right?
No, they commit more crime.
Or rather, they commit more crimes proportional if compared with white America, right?
Yes.
So if we look at this and we say, like, immigrants make up what? Undocumented immigrants. I'm looking at this like this. They make up what? Like 311 million of the population, if I'm not mistaken?
No, it's definitely not 11. I mean, part of being undocumented is we really don't have an official number, but the estimates vary from between 11 and 40 million.
As far as I've seen, the most, the Pew Research puts it at 10.
No, it's closer to 23 million. It's closer to 23 million.
The Oxford Criminology and Criminal Justice puts it at 11.6.
It is not. It's been 11 million for 30 years. That's 23 million.
So what's the number?
Where does that come from?
I believe that number's from Harvard.
Okay.
What number?
The Foundation for
Harvard,
American Immigration Research says about 14.3 million since 2019.
Oxford Criminology.
The point is that there are people that estimate it's as high as 40 million. They're undocumented. No. Because if you're going to try to establish,
y'all stop interrupting.
If you're going to try to establish that there's 11 million people, like even the moderate people, like this guy said earlier, it's like 13 or 14 million. That number has been in the low teens of millions, obviously, for like 20 years. And you can get estimates that range from between 11 to 40 million. So, before you go and say that, there's only 11 million illegal immigrants in the country, it's important to establish inherently the problem is that, we have no idea how many there are. But on top of that, the numbers that you're giving is totally wrong and outdated.
Okay, so we don't know what they are yet. The numbers that I'm giving are wrong.
Yes, correct. Because that number has been used for 20 years in spite of the fact that we know that millions of people have been coming over every year illegally. So how could that be possible?
Okay, millions. We get 72,000.
Here it is. Here's a Yale and MIT study. So 22
Does
million.
Obama's mass amnesty affect that number at all? Like make it go down?
No, because Obama didn't do a mass amnesty.
Okay, well, regardless.
Not on the scale that we're talking about. Not that would affect
help you out here. Can we do 30 mil? Can we just do 30 mil?
No, 22 million is the number working with.
Okay, we'll do 22 million, right? So what percentage of the population then are illegal immigrants? 22 divided by 316, right?
Yeah,
they make up about 7%.
Well, I mean, according to Ann Coulter and Bear Stearns, one of the leading financial institutions in America up until 2015, according to Audios America, written by Ann Coulter, we're looking at probably 20 to 30 undocumented people.
Okay, so
I don't see why that's irrational.
No, the number matters here because we're looking at it.
Of course, it matters.
So what number do you guys want to use? I'll take your number for this. You know what? Let's do it.
I'm very willing to have the hill that I live and die on being 20 million illegal immigrants.
Okay,
I think that's probably a low ball at this point.
I'm happy to go to the high ball if you guys want. I'm more than happy to. If you want, we'll do 30 mil. Like I genuinely.
No. I think 20 mil is totally.
Okay, whatever. Let's just go off of that number.
20 mil is like a totally fair number.
So we can go off. So that means that illegal immigrants make up about 7.5% of our population.
Guys, something huge. Hey, guys, listen. Something huge just happened. Listen.
Oh,
something huge just happened.
Bosch?
No, something huge just happened. So after 17 years, the Supreme Court has permitted the federal death penalty to go back into effect.
Nice.
Good.
Face.
That's so lame.
No.
Kill all the fucking
That's so lame.
pedophiles.
No, that's stupid. That's
No, it's
stupid.
awesome.
so
We're
lame.
not. Okay.
That's disgusting. That's,
Wait,
that's
says
genuinely
kill them all.
disgusting.
Kill
Dude,
them
are you
all.
from
Put them
North
up against
Africa?
a wall.
Dude, kill the fucking.
Aren't I
pedophiles.
from
No.
North Africa, Nick?
Yeah.
Put them up
Don't
against the
they
wall.
chop
All
heads
fucking
over there?
crazy.
I love how
Because-
the
yeah, yeah.
lolbirds are against.
No, Nick.
Kill the
Nick, because
Yeah, because
wait,
it's an
brown pill,
irrational
brown pill.
entity.
One sec. Because I'm from North Africa, and because I realize that giving a government that much power to allow them to decide whether or not it's okay to kill somebody and giving the government the power over life and death is wrong. That's why I believe that maybe we shouldn't have the death penalty. Because
It's
my home country of
subjective.
Algeria had a dictator for about, if I'm not mistaken, from
Yeah, and it was
1999
awesome.
to about 2020. Right? Guess what this man did? This man used the death penalty in Algeria to execute anybody who disagreed with him.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Libya. I thought you were talking about Gaddafi.
Oh, no,
I was
no,
going
I'm
to say he
Algerian.
used his power to fight the banks.
Death penalty is
God,
such a
thank God I'm not Libyan.
subjective
Thank
system.
God
I'll
I'm not
only
Libyan.
support the death penalty under dictator Fuentes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Kill
subjective.
all disrespectors.
I don't know. If we support
That
the
is-
dictator,
all
Fuentes, some of
die.
us.
I don't know,
Are you
Sap.
gonna
That
take
was
me
a
out for-
pretty.
If
You
we
gonna
support
take me
the
out
death
for
penalty under
degeneracy?
Fuentes, I don't think I'd pass.
I think you would be
No,
promoting
I would.
innocent
I don't
killings
know.
of
It depends
people.
on your crimes. If you're like a typical libertarian, you probably have
Death
to go.
Crime is not
Regardless of the
white.
crime,
Death
innocent
crime
people
is
would
not
be
being
dying, my
white.
good sir.
My
What?
crime is not being white.
Yes, the
that
traitor
did kind of
before the
completely
enemy.
change the topic. Do we want to move on to that, or do we want to keep
Do
discussing?
you want to move on to death penalty? I'd love to.
Yeah, I got a question for Nick really quick though.
So easy to debunk.
Nick, what do you think about autocracy, whether it be by like a monarch or a dictator?
I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of authoritarianism.
Amen. Nick,
Authoritarians are only authoritarian when they're authoritarian.
MJ, why are you so surprised? Like what?
Yeah, I know I'm surprised, but like him
Why?
saying it just hurt.
Why
No,
though? Why?
absolute monarchy.
We have to have a democracy.
No, we don't want a democracy either, my
Nobody
guy.
wants a democracy.
Such a
I just don't
democracy.
think I
Yo.
don't want to get cut.
I don't know
Democracy
anyone
is
who's
you know
gay,
what I
for
mean?
democracy.
Democracy.
I have a
is
pretty
weak
important question.
for animals. Yeah. What?
Is Israel our greatest ally?
Okay. Now you're just doing greatest hits.
Democracy,
Of course
death
not.
penalty.
I think me and Nick actually agree on this point though when it comes
Well, yeah,
to
the
because
rational
you're
things.
a based Muslim.
when it comes to
You too.
Okay.
We have one struggle on this issue.
Okay.
when it comes to Israel, I just don't like supporting genocidal nations. Like, I don't think y'all like supporting.
But you
genocidal
support it
nations.
for cringe reasons, not based reasons.
Yeah.
I don't support government manipulation of money. So
Based.
that's why I don't support it.
What does that have to do with Israel?
I don't want my money being taxed away from me to go into Israel.
But you
I don't
misspoke.
wanna say
Wait.
more
What about all the
Yeah,
poor
those
Holocaust
pesky
victims,
Israelis.
bro?
You
Come on.
misspoke. That's
Oh
not-
God. Oh God. No.
Through direct causation of America interference, I think not.
Yeah. Yeah. We can all agree shilling for Israel is gay.
Yeah.
Would
Well,
you
I
want to
agree.
join my
I agree.
movement?
I think it's
Israel's
just
bad.
stupid.
Shilling for Israel makes you a sodomite.
Based. Was that
No,
Nick
I just-
Videos with the base take?
Have you seen his political compass, Nick?
Bro,
I
he's
think we're about to have a new
he's gone
Nick
full
Fuentes.
circle, my guy. He's
Look
been.
at his.
I'm
look at his
surprised he
political
hasn't
compass.
somehow been in all 4 quadrants by now of the political compass.
I've been in a couple quadrants. I was in the bottom right. Now I'm top left. Epically.
Ah, that's such an why.
I
Wait,
used to be a
you
Bernie
wait,
bro.
you aren't. Wait, you're not. Oh, you're in the top left quadrant. Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the top left.
Yeah.
What?
Wait,
Yeah, I'm in the. Wait, yeah, we're both in the most. Yeah, most
What?
economic nationalisms are like top left.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you believe in
The problem
economic?
is
Yeah.
the political compass is just like not. It does not adequately reflect political reality
Mhm.
in the
Yeah, it
21st
doesn't.
century because it's you
Well, of
need
course
this
not.
like cultural and identity axis. This distinction about like size of government and even economics. I mean, economics is maybe more relevant, but size of government to me is just
So
like a joke.
yeah,
And the
so-
questions are stupid.
So Nick, I just have one question. I don't want to get too sidetracked on immigration, but
Okay.
just kind of surrounding this idea, just for sake of argument, so we can know if even discussing economics or anything other than social cohesion is even relevant. If we were to accept the premise for hypothetical, I mean, I personally believe this based on research I've done that immigrants are a net positive to the economy. But even if we accepted that, would you still not be for it due to the, you know, social ramifications you necessarily see?
Yeah, even if it was an economic boon, I would still say no.
So us to discuss economics is basically irrelevant when it
Yeah, and I said that earlier. I said that the primary concern is social.
So I mean, I guess wasn't really a thing we needed to spend a lot of time discussing. But all right.
Well, okay then. Let's move to crime then. Again, I was making a point before we realized that. I was making a point before we realized that the Supreme Court decided to pretty much allow the government to do whatever it wants.
Pretty gay.
Well, I don't think they can just kill anybody.
Well, yeah.
I think they have to kill certain people.
Which is not
the ones you
like
deemed
globalists.
the ones that.
No, the ones that God deems.
God.
God will set the target. It's
yes,
like,
because
in the name of religion, we've never seen that before.
Romans 13, the ruler does not bear the sword for no reason.
Hell yeah, he has the sword, folks.
Oh my God.
But you guys want the president to be just like some gay bureaucrat. You probably don't even want a president. You're like, yeah, your president's too much power and nonsense.
Down with bureaucracy.
I don't believe in existence of a president in an objective society.
Yeah,
that's lame.
The president should be the one who, you know, gets out of his little motorcade, waves his hand, goes rah rah America on the 4th of July, and then everyone goes back to their lives as if the president.
I want president should have prima nocta and rule, and proud and terrible king.
There's no need for democracy.
Yeah, until he doesn't support what you support.
But he will.
And then when that happens,
we have to ensure that happens.
Wait a second, who gave this guy so much power?
All of it. Remember,
yeah, but that's just it. That's just the problem. Is it's like, well, if we win, we can't win because, you know, then the other team might win. It's like that. It is imperative that we win. I mean, you know, if the enemy is in control, you know, it doesn't matter. We need to be in control. That's the whole point.
Well, just deport everybody who disagrees with them.
Yeah.
Or just
wait, Nick,
in
I'm
jail.
curious because you were talking a little bit about another reason why you were against certain forms of immigration was because they like vote overwhelmingly, you know, for democratic policies and things like that. But wouldn't you say that a larger threat to that would be necessarily the white liberal, the natural born citizen who votes probably for those policies and even over and larger?
Yeah, but they're already here. They're already here.
Well,
I mean, Texas isn't going blue because of white liberals.
Why wouldn't you want to?
And the African Americans you're talking about are already here as well. Like what?
Yeah, I know. That they're adding to their voter base. Do you understand that? I mean, they've got white liberals. They've got 97% of the blacks.
We agree.
And so they're trying to add more Democrats. It's addition. They're adding them into Texas, Arizona, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia. It's flipping strategic states.
Okay,
so I mean,
okay, Nick. Hypothetically, if we were to put this in place, this is not what I support, but just for sake of argument, if we were to support a plan in which first generation immigrants would not be able to vote, would you be then okay with that?
No, because then second generation immigrants will vote.
Well, yeah, but we also look at, I mean, the assimilation of second-generation immigrants.
But they don't assimilate.
How about nobody vote?
After
we just remove democracy.
Exactly. Nobody votes.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Remove democracy.
Nobody votes.
We need Donald Trump to be the only voter.
Nick.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like Cubans, right? Nick.
Oh, here we go.
One second, right? Cubans, right? Or like other like Latin American groups. Some of them vote predominantly Republican. That's because they associate the Democratic Party with socialism. They don't want to put socialism, and they honestly don't care about the immigration policies, right? And they're allowed to look over the immigration policies of the Republican Party, right, and say, okay, like they can say, okay, it's okay that they don't like immigrants, right, like us, right, as long as we don't get those the commies, right, that they see
it's
as the
not
Democrats,
about like. It's not even that we don't like them. And anyway, the thing about Cubans
I'm just,
is
let me finish my point.
Okay, yeah.
I'm saying, like,
that's yours. Brilliant.
If you look at Africans, right, especially like Africans like myself and my parents, right, we are very right-leaning, right? Like my dad would vote.
Yeah,
for the
you're
Republican
very
Party.
right-leaning. That I can tell.
Well, here's the thing. MJ,
my dad would vote for the Republican Party.
Shut up! You're a cringe libertarian.
My dad would vote for the Republican Party like 1,000 times a day. But
yeah, well, the GOP is gay. We need people that are right wing.
The issue here is that the reason why a lot of people like don't vote for the Republican Party, especially us, is because you're anti-immigrant. So it's kind of like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
But that's because you see yourselves as immigrants and not Americans. That's the whole. You should.
No,
if
you
were
see
truly
them
an
as
American,
immigrants and not Americans.
You yourself. You just said the reason that we don't vote for Republicans is because they're anti-immigrant.
Because no, Nick, it's because people like like you
isn't immigration immigration is an action. So if you're anti-immigration, anti the action of immigrating, it's regardless of whether you consider yourself American or not, you're anti the action that got them to the country.
And the Republican Party's not even anti-immigrant. I mean, the Republican Party hasn't been anti-immigrant for decades.
In comparison, no. But
oh, give me a break. Donald Trump said in the State of the Union in 2018 that he wanted to bring in more legal immigrants than ever before, and that's Donald Trump, the great immigration hawk, the great nativist.
Ever before.
Give
me
a break.
Take that man's hyperbole for his word.
Okay, but the point: how do you make the case that he's anti-immigrant? His immigration proposal from Kushner does not cut immigration by one immigrant. It just makes it merit-based as opposed to family-based. The GOP's not anti-immigrant. I wish they were, but they're not. And that's just it. If immigrants are voting based on how Republicans consider immigrants, and they're on the side of the immigrants, it's like that just proves the whole point. They're not properly assimilated, and we don't need any more of them.
They're not properly assimilated because they disagree with the idea that somebody's trying to say that the way that they got into this country is bad, right? Like your premise here is like saying like your premise makes no sense here because what you're saying is that they're not assimilated, they're not properly assimilated because they don't agree with me, right? The only reason they don't agree with you is because you're attacking the very way that they got into this country. Like, what do you expect, Nick?
Here's the deal.
Genuinely, what do you expect? Like,
here's the deal, Jack.
If you were to drop the anti-immigrant rhetoric, I promise you, I 100% promise you, you would see an uptick in every single immigrant group, not even going for the Republican Party. Let's forget whether or not the Republican Party is or isn't anti-immigrant on paper, right? Because regardless, the portrayal there is that they're still anti-immigrant. If you were to drop the anti-immigrant stuff, you would see a massive demographic switch from all demographics to go towards voting more right, because guess what, immigrants are more right leaning. We like tax cuts, we don't like socialism.
But that's not right wing. Let me finish. Come on, how long do I have to listen to this nonsense?
We don't like socialism. We don't like socialism. We don't like these ideas. We are right leaning culturally. Like come on now. Like you said so yourself, Muslims like Muslims are right leaning socially. So are most Africans, like from Southern Africa, like
most are Christian.
Most of them are like traditionally Christian or traditionally Muslim, which are very right leaning cultural beliefs, right? Like Nick, I don't think you know how much you are similar to most of the immigrants that you hate. Not that you hate, rather. I'm sorry for that.
See, there it is.
No, Nick, I'm curious though. I mean, would that be a mischaracterization?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so telling that you assume that I do hate immigrants. I don't hate immigrants. It's not a question of love, hate, anything like that.
Regardless of what I assume, the portrayal's there, right? Would you agree that the portrayal's there?
Absolutely not. And here's the thing. You know, we all have to be adults and grow up. And what part of being an adult is that, you know, we're not so sensitive to these things. And you talk about assimilation, and I'll tell you what's not assimilated. It's not assimilated for a foreigner to come to America and then start making demands about pandering. Well, I'm not going to vote for you because we won't pander to immigrants? Sorry, we're the party of Americans, not foreigners. And you ask, you know, what makes somebody assimilated? My ancestors immigrated here 4 generations ago. I don't think of myself as an immigrant. And my parents don't think of themselves
4
as
generations ago.
But moreover, wait. But moreover, my ancestors, when they got on this land, they kissed the ground when they got here, and they considered themselves Americans. And that is not the case with this current class of people. And it's not the case whoa. I listen to your nonsense for 20 minutes. Let me finish my point here. You know, there's this whole like indignant attitude about, well, we just need to pander more to immigrants. It's also not true. George W. Bush, this was his great gamble, you know, compassionate conservatism. He let in 8 million immigrants, legal and illegal, in the first 5 years of his presidency. And how have Republicans been rewarded from this? I mean, we don't even get more than half. We don't even get more than half of Hispanics. And the great gamble with George W. Bush's immigration plan was that if we would just you know, bring them all over and get soft on them and so on, bless you, then we were going to win them all over the ballot box, and it didn't happen. And, you know, we pander to blacks, we pander to Hispanics, we pander to immigrants. You know, even Trump did. And as much as he was against illegal immigration, and they still vote Democrat. And the thing is that it's not just about ideology. You know, these people are coming over here and you say, well, they're right wing because they want like lower taxes. Well, I mean, who wants to pay more taxes? It means more to be right wing than just to be against high taxes. There's more to being right wing than being against like socialism. And you're seeing that play out right now. It's about statues. It's about holidays. It's about heroes. It's about our founders. It's about our culture, our heritage. You know, is it loving America when you come over here and you speak Spanish?
But who's doing that? Wait, Nick, who's demanding that the statues
right wing didn't even originally.
Those are not immigrants. And first of all, Nick, as somebody who's unfairly portrayed, or by your regards, somebody who like, I think you understand optics better than anybody else. Right? Yeah. Like, just because you do something doesn't mean that the optics of said thing are going to show up. Because guess what? George Bush might have shown off his compassionate conservatism, right? But guess what? The Democrat Party attacked him on that point and said, oh, no, you're actually anti-immigrant. And George Bush failed to prove to the American public
this is just a dumb rationalization.
Guess what? It's all about optics, and the Republican Party has just failed at delivering genuine optics.
We just have to be more visibly pandering to foreigners.
Wait, Nick.
Yes, you have to be more visibly pandering. And politics is pandering.
Yeah, that's kind of what politics is.
Acting like you're on some moral high ground by saying, "Oh, I'm not going to pander," is why the Republican Party is about to lose Texas, and why they lost California, and why they're going to lose like this coming up election. Like, this moral high ground of no pandering.
Yeah,
it's not. No, you're totally missing the point, man. This is just like total smooth brain stuff. The point is, if you're going to come over here and be an American, 100%. Because if you're going to come here and be an American, the whole point is that you clearly are still thinking as a foreigner when you say something like, well, you know, I'm not going to vote for Republicans because, you know, they haven't pandered to immigrants. Like, you're saying it's a perception problem. Wait. You're saying
like me out.
Hold on. You're saying, wait, are you an immigrant, by the way?
No, I was speaking from their perspective.
Well, you know, our friend over here from Algeria just said a moment ago, he just said that he would be more inclined to vote Republican or whatever, but they have this anti-immigrant rhetoric. And here's the thing. You got to come here. You got to come here and assimilate. I don't see myself as an immigrant because I'm not one. I'm a native, and I'm not looking out for immigrants. I'm not looking out for anything like that. I'm looking out for America. I'm perfectly fine with pandering to natives, to people that are Americans.
Which
also, by the way,
I have a question.
After this, Bush, by the way, actually gained the Hispanic vote over Al Gore after that.
What was the percentage?
If I'm not mistaken, I remember.
You're wrong about that. We haven't won a majority of Hispanics in this century with in
Nick,
the presidential
which
race.
Americans are you concerned about?
I'm talking about all Americans. I know that's a very loaded, like, gay left wing. Oh, you're not concerned about white people.
No.
I'm concerned about American citizens. No, but it's a loaded question. I know where you're going with that. I'm concerned about native-born Americans. We are the Native Americans. I'm not concerned about people in Mexico. I'm not concerned about people in Africa.
How about children who are born from immigrant parents who are?
Oh, you mean anchor babies? You mean they're born on the land and now they're one of us? I don't think so.
They adhere to your definition, do they not?
Yeah, no, they really don't. A nation isn't just lines on a map, okay?
Well, no, but that's what Nick said. They're native-born Americans.
Well, what I'm talking about is real native-born Americans. I'm talking about Americans that have been here for generations, not people that crossed over to the end zone and dropped a fucking baby over the border. That's very different. And what it means to be an American is not just citizenship. It's not just that you're on the land. What it means to be an American is that you love this country and all of its history and its people, and you see yourself as a part of it. And clearly, immigrants do not. Clearly, these immigrants that are coming into the Southwest, and they're celebrating
aren't
Indigenous
you
Peoples
openly
Day.
pandering right now to people who would consider them Americans? Your entire movement is America First. Isn't that openly pandering to win some sort of political game?
Like I said, I mean, that's just like a total idiotic objection, because the point is not about pandering. I mean, this is just like a very low IQ like comeback. The point is not about, because it is, because the point is not about pandering in itself. The point is about American politicians bending over backwards to appease foreigners, to appease people that spiritually or in terms of their citizenship, you know, whatever you want to qualify it as, bending over backwards as representatives of this country to appeal to foreigners. It's inappropriate. In the same way that I don't want the American president to bend over backwards to appease, or whatever word you want to use, pander to people living in Mexico now, I don't want the president to bend over backwards and appease people that lived in Mexico yesterday, walked across the border, and dropped a fucking baby in Texas. It's the same thing.
Nick, you were clearly lying when you were talking about George Bush. George Bush actually gained the Hispanic vote after his first term.
That's not true.
That is true. When the 2000 election was going on, I'm pretty sure George Bush only got 35 of the vote, and I'm pretty sure after his first term in 2004, he got like 40 to 45%.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Even letting in 8 million people in 5 years, we didn't even win the majority of Hispanics. We didn't even win the majority, and we didn't win that many in 08, and we didn't win that many in 12, and we didn't win that many in 16. And mark my words, we're not going to win that many in 2020. We're probably going to get a little bit more because we got 27 and 16,
Nick,
but that's exactly the point.
Nick, do you understand how you're being openly contradictory on your own statement?
No, because that's not happening. So I can't realize something that's not happening.
Look what you're saying. Look what you're saying, right?
No, I see what I'm saying. I think you don't see what I'm saying.
Wait, one sec. These immigrants, right? You're saying these immigrants are, they should see themselves as American. They should care about America. They should love America, right? And then at the same time, you'll turn around and you'll say, oh, our president shouldn't appease these foreigners. If you want them to be American, at least treat them like Americans. That's the argument that's being made.
But that's exactly it. I mean, you clearly, and you just said this a moment ago, you just said, well, immigrants need to be pandered to as immigrants. And I'll tell you, my America First message, I'm sure it appeals to people that consider themselves Americans. It's only foreigners who by being alienated by my rhetoric in the first place, I mean, in the fact, they are proving themselves to be foreigners.
Wait, Nick, are you saying the only people who are opposed to your message are immigrants?
No, I'm saying the only people that are opposed to my message are people that don't love America and don't want to put America first.
Why don't we start treating then we can start treating immigration more as an act, and then making them treating them as Americans. They're not immigrants. They're not foreigners when they come here. Immigration is the act. Well,
you can say that, but an immigrant comes here, and by virtue of them being on the land, it doesn't make them American.
I know, but the thing is, you're asking them. If I move to China,
that doesn't make me Chinese.
Yeah, but you're asking them to consider themselves American. Yeah, you're asking them to consider Are you trying to give them an impossible equation so they can't come here anymore?
Let's try and keep it one at a time. Okay. Guys, let's try and keep it one at a time.
What is the objection? What clearly is the objection?
It feels like you're kind of giving them an impossible problem so they can't solve it.
I'm not giving them an impossible problem.
You're saying they should treat themselves more like Americans, so that they should declare themselves Americans so that they can get your respect. But no, they can't be Americans because they're foreigners and immigrants.
I'm saying they're not Americans. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
but don't you want them to assimilate?
Okay. Do you guys all just want to talk and say that I hate minorities and just talk over me? Or how do we want?
I never said you hated anybody, bro.
Okay, sure.
Guys,
everyone just implied it.
Listen. One at a time. One at a time against him. Okay, we cannot have 5 people going at him at once. One at a time.
Yeah,
believe me, I don't like the rhetoric. I don't like the rhetoric that goes against your movement where you guys are like hatred. I don't support that. I don't support that. I don't think you're hatred towards anybody. Well, they're wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, the point being is this. The point being is it's very simple. We don't need any more immigrants. And that's not more complicated than that. We don't need any more immigrants, and we don't need to pander to immigrants. That's the other thing. We don't need to pander to people, and because the genesis of this conversation was about voting. And the point is simply this. Immigrants come here and they vote left, and their kids vote left. Their kids vote left more than they do, specifically Asians, but also Hispanics. Immigrants come here and they vote left, and then their kids vote left. And you could say, well, you could win some of them if you give 8 million people entry into the country in 5 years. I don't want to do that. But they come here and they vote left. And you're saying, well, but you could make them vote right. And it's like, well, why would we do that? Why would we bring in, because we're kind of getting away into other areas, but let's just bring it back to the practical question, which is, immigrants are coming here and they're voting left. And why are they voting left? They're voting left, and they're voting for a party that is now explicitly anti-American, against American values, against the Constitution. Any way you want to cut it, they're against America. And so why would we bring in more people, whether we can win them or we can't win them? We have to pander, but visibly and significantly, whatever it is, we're bringing over people that are leftist. We're bringing over people that are voting Democrat. It's causing us to lose elections. That's how we lost California. That's how we're losing Texas. That's how we lost Virginia. Why would we continue to do that? Why would me as a Republican continue to allow the Democrats to bring in voters to continue to vote their party in? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
This isn't even like a sound argument because the problem with the two-party system is independent of immigration.
Oh, brother, yeah. So, right. Well, we bring in 1 million immigrants a year. I'm going to try and dismantle the two-party system. That's clearly not.
Well, I think the idea is not how many people you're letting in. I think it's the fact that you consider them. It would be, and then you might hate on me for saying pandering, but it would be helpful to consider them. Say you're coming here and you're becoming Americans, and this party, this Democratic Party, they're anti-American. They're anti what you're coming here to stand for.
What are they coming here to stand for? I mean, when people come from Central
Tell them
America,
that
when people come from Mexico over, they're economic migrants. We're talking about illegals. We're talking about economic migrants, whether they come from an overstayed visa from Asia or they come here by crossing the border in the South. They're economic migrants. I mean, they're not coming here out of any ideology of like, you know, the adventure of a lifetime and, you know, this rugged individualism. They're coming here because they're peasants in Mexico and they come here and they're able to live and have a decent standard of living. I mean, let's not pretend it's anything more than naked economic self-interest. So, you know, this kind of pitch of like socialism, it didn't work in 16, it didn't work in 12, 8, 4, 2000, it doesn't work. And these people come over here and they vote that way because they perceive the Democrats as the party of non-whites.
I mean, it worked.
I hate to be anecdotal.
It worked in 2000 when.
Oh,
Bush
did we win the
was,
majority?
No, but there was a 10% increase. Doesn't that show that if you were to be like, if you were to pander to them, that you're like pro-immigration, that they would vote Republican?
But why do that? I mean, why would we do that? I just don't understand that we have a people. If you look, there's Pew Research on this. 1 in 10 legal Hispanic immigrants identify as Republican. 1 in 20 illegal Hispanic immigrants identify as Republican. Why would we bring people over here that have not voted for a Republican in the majority in this century for president to bring them over here and then try to win them over when we could just simply not have them here and have the native population, which has been here for generations, determine the outcome of elections, as opposed to, you know, because it's clearly a game that the Democrats play. They bring in immigrants to Texas and Arizona. That's what they did to California, and then they dominate the state. We've seen it happen. It has happened, and you guys are arguing that it should continue, and, you know, now the onus is on us to convert them. It just doesn't make it.
If I can respectfully come in right here, right? Like, so what you're saying here, right? So what you're saying here simply is that we can't pander to these immigrant groups, right? And we have to treat them in a way, right, in this specific way, because they vote against us because we don't pander to these immigrant groups. You're shooting yourself in the foot. I don't see how you don't see this point, right?
Okay.
Like the argument here, like you're saying we can't bring them in because they'll vote against us, right? But by not bringing them in, you're making them vote against you. Right?
But
like,
if we don't bring them in, they can't vote against us. But if you don't bring them in, they can't vote. They don't vote
MJ,
in
I think
any
Nick's
way.
arguing that if you take away the gun, you can't shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to steer the gun away from ourselves if you don't have a gun pointed at your head, which is the whole point.
Yeah. Okay, Nick, but I don't think the voting necessarily is what you're worried about, because if we look at the necessarily when it comes down to hypothetically, if they were to vote Republican, would you still be anti-immigration?
Yes. But I said this earlier. The question was about, you know, somebody was asking this leading question about, well, what if they were European? And I said there's a variety of problems with the volume of immigrants we've been bringing in. And I said one of the problems with European immigrants is that they would vote Democrat anyway. So voting is a big part of it. But that's not the exclusive or only or even primary part of it. But it is an expression of the broader problem, which is that socially and culturally, they are not assimilable into the social fabric.
Okay. So if we go back to this idea of the 2000 election or the 2004 election, when it was, 8 million more came in and there was about 10% increase in voting for the Republican Party, I think what we're failing to look at here is a majority of immigrants do not vote. It's not like immigrants are a large voting bloc in this country. So it's not like they will have this huge amount of sway that you're speaking of. And also a 10% increase on 8 million immigrants in which their voting bloc is incredibly small is an incredibly substantive amount considering how little they vote. So I don't think that is considered.
But here's the thing. I mean, you just don't know what you're talking about, because the exact thing that I'm describing happened in California. Ronald Reagan won California, I think it was 3 or 4 times between president and governor. Nixon won it 6 times. California used to be a hotly contested state and one that Republicans could carry considerably easily. now we know that California is the most far left. It is the most unwinnable state in the country for Republicans. We know that every city is like this. We know that the entire state is like this. And you know, this is not me saying this. This is both Republicans and Democrats attribute that change to massive amounts of immigration. And the same thing is happening to Texas. They credit immigration for doing the same thing in Virginia. It's happening in Georgia. It's happening in Florida, and all these swing states. So it's not even a question of, you know, my imagination or anything. I mean, this is something that has happened to these different states. It's a matter of states, and it will happen because, you know, immigrants absolutely vote. That's number one. And number two, even if they don't vote, their kids vote. And their kids, the children of their children vote, their grandchildren, and on and on. You mean you're planting a seed in here which can never be undone. Immigrants come here and they have, you know, on average something like 2.5 kids per mother. That's the fertility rate. Plus, they can bring over more immigrants because of family-based migration. So you bring over one immigrant, and irreversibly, you've brought in an entire family and then generations, and and it's exponential growth. And that's not voters. That's not just voters, but it's also, you know, people that are living in the country. And I think that making these kinds of irreversible transformations demographically, this is something that we have to think very, and you keep saying okay, and it's obvious you're not hearing me. This has to be thought about very seriously, and this kind of like, oh well, you know, what if they don't vote? Oh well, you know, what if we just pander to them? I mean, do you understand the gravity of tens of millions of people coming in here and displacing the native population? Do you really think it's as arbitrary as, oh, they just came from Mexico? Why do you think Mexico doesn't work? Why do you think all the countries in Latin America don't work? How do you think you take people from a country that doesn't work and bring them to a country that does work, and they're gonna be the same, better, and not be absolutely worse and create the same conditions that prevailed in their countries? And why isn't it a serious question and worthy of concern? We're just going to dismiss it and say, well, you know, maybe they'll vote right, maybe they'll vote left, but we just have to pander to them more. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No, I never mentioned that any of those were the case. What I'm saying here, and I think is interesting, is you keep saying they keep voting blue. I think when we're trying to figure out why they're voting blue, I think it has to do with the sentiment that you're portraying, when I think there could be a very interesting sentiment that could be portrayed if we decide that, you know what if we welcome them as Americans? What if we say, you know what it means to be American? It means to be American is to have more right-leaning values, not to have left-leaning values. The left is anti-American. They're anti-you. We are pro-American. And as Americans, we are going to welcome you in and help foster a society that shares our values. That's the beauty of America. It's turning other cultures into the American.
That's not the beauty of
yeah, America. We're so pro-American. We're gonna let in immigrants that aren't American.
Here's the thing, but you're missing the point. No, it's not the point of America. The point of America is not to bring in immigrants.
Nick, would you say I'm an American?
I don't know who you are.
Would you say
what constitutes an American to you? Great question, Nick. What constitutes an American to you, Nick?
I told you earlier what constitutes an American. Well, I think that it's a difficult question, but I'll tell you what's not American, and that's bringing over millions of foreigners that don't speak the language, millions of people that will never assimilate, and turning America into a country that is majority non-white. I think that once you reach that tipping point and beyond, it ceases to be stop. You know, here's the thing. You cannot have and engage in a good faith discussion and just be waiting to say the next thing. This is why none of you are understanding this. Okay. Well, now I'm going to tell you about how, you know, America's great because we're going to pander to more immigrants. The point is this: whether they vote Republican or don't vote Republican, what's the gamble? We're gambling on our entire civilizational inheritance, and that's not an exaggeration to say that. Everything that makes America great very easily could be lost when you switch out the population for another one. When you take a population from Europe that built up Germany and Britain and France and Italy and all those great countries and put them in America, you know, a lot can be lost when you remove those people and now put in place the people that built Nigeria and the people that built Brazil and the people that built Mexico and India. And I don't think anybody understands the gravity of that. You know, like maybe they'll vote Republican. Yeah, sure. Let's say they all vote Republican and they all vote for lower taxes and more immigrants. What happens when they don't, or if they don't? What happens even if they do? They still dramatically change the standards of living and the quality of life in the country. Are we willing to make that gamble? And moreover, why would we have to? Why is the onus on me to prove why we should not have millions of foreigners move here, and the onus is not on anybody else to prove the benefit to the American people of bringing millions and millions of foreigners here? Is it because the GDP will grow? Is it because the cost of goods will go down? Because, I don't think that even if that happened, I don't think that would be worth risking our civilizational inheritance. Because, my ancestors lived in this country when it was a great country. And America is no longer a great country. And I think that's in large part due to immigration.
Okay.
And we should figure out what we're doing here, before we try any more of this experiment.
All right. I'm going to ask you again, what constitutes an American to you? What characteristics make an American?
That's a dumb question.
I'm asking you.
The characteristics that make somebody an American, I think that it's really not about what makes an individual an American. It's about what makes America America. Because here's the thing, we've had, for example, blacks in this country for 500 years,
right.
or 400 years. And I don't think that blacks are the same kind of American as whites are, frankly. I think that they are American in the sense that they've been on the North American continent. I think that they're American in the sense that they've been, under the sovereignty. They've been subject to the sovereignty of the American state. But is somebody what's that noise?
I don't know what it is. I apologize. I don't
electric noise. But
Sounds
in any
like a
case,
taser.
their language, their culture, their values, almost everything about them is distinct from white Americans. It's not to say that they are unique in the sense that they have been on this continent as long as we have, and they've obviously had a very unique experience because they were brought over here, against their will as slaves, and then experienced segregation. So I will say they are unique. I would say that you've got white Americans, you've got black Americans, which I think are American but distinct, and then I think you've got really everybody else. It's not to say that, non-white or non-black groups can't become American, but it is to say that if America as a whole becomes non-white, it ceases to be American. I'm a perfect example. I'm a quarter Mexican. My father's half Mexican, and I would say that he's an American. I think that he and his ancestors are qualitatively different than the millions of immigrants that are coming over now, because the immigration now is qualitatively and quantitatively different than the immigration of, some non-black and non-white minority groups that came here 100 years ago or prior to 1965. And, in large part, that's just, it goes back to the quantitative difference. It's just a numbers difference. The number of non-white immigrants that were coming here 100 years ago was marginal compared to the number of immigrants coming from Europe. And what is the consequence of that? It means that, they're growing up in, around, embedded in white neighborhoods. And so, I think you could have a proper assimilation occurring. The immigration that's happening now is that it's the volume is exponentially greater. And not only is it greater, but they're moving to the same places. They're geographically concentrated in the same cities, in the same, Southwest, in the same region of the country. They're all, whether they're Mexican, Puerto Rican, I know there's ethnic differences between them, but they're all speaking the same language. And moreover, because of the contiguity of Mexico with America, it's much easier for them to maintain a connection to their culture than it is for other immigrants. And that's just one example. But the point being is that, you could say that a Mexican can become an American, a Chinese person can become an American, but America cannot become a Mexican, Chinese, African country and still be America. I think that's the distinction.
Right. So I guess when it comes down to it, so it's a combination, one part race, or the other one would be cultural or societal values. I mean, would you say that there are many white people who do not hold values that you would consider to be American? I mean, many people on the left, many leftists, would you say, who support the disrespecting of the flag, as you would say, by kneeling for the anthem or even burning the American flag? Would you say that they're not Americans, or would you say they are Americans?
I would say they're not Americans, but not in the same way.
Okay, so what makes them not Americans? Their values?
No, because here's the thing: America is a European country. I mean, the character and the composition of the country up until recently is European. And the thing is that I believe that only Europeans can perpetuate American civilization, which means, in other words, even if every American was a leftist today, barring immigration, there's a potentiality where in 3 centuries, you're still going to have a European nation, and they're not going to be leftist, and they will still have the capacity to perpetuate European civilization.
Okay.
If you switch out that population with Hispanics, I don't think there's a scenario where 300 million Hispanics on this land perpetuate American civilization.
Okay, Nick, so who would you rather have in this country? A white European leftist or a Hispanic proud American who supports all the values that you support?
Probably a white European leftist, honestly.
Why?
Because, and I just explained this, because, even if a left-wing white person isn't expressing America's values now, they still have the potential to perpetuate American civilization in the future. Because you're not talking about one white person and one Hispanic. You're talking about genes. You're talking about generations. And so, America, if it loses that European character, it doesn't get it back. And it ceases to be America at that point. You could call it whatever you'd like, America 2, postmodern America, Latin America, whatever you want to call it, but it won't be the same country. And so even if you have, and don't get me wrong, it's not to say dislike, non-white Trump supporters or non-white conservatives or anything like that, but it's simply about the composition of the country, which is to say that you cannot replace the population of the country and have the same country. It's not to say that you can't have people that are not European, but it is to say that everybody cannot be not European. The majority can't be not European. I don't know why that's difficult to understand. People get hung up on this because, then you're talking about, well, is that guy not an American? Is that guy not an American? We're talking about America, and we're talking about the composition of the country. If we were talking about one Mexican Trump supporter, it'd be whatever, but we're not. We're talking about 70 million immigrants in 60 years, which is a big difference. And we're not talking about one person. We're talking about America. We're talking about the whole country. So that's why I said it's a stupid question earlier. I think it's useless to get hung up on the weeds on that, because it's not about an individual, because we're not dealing with individuals. We're dealing with millions and millions of people on a civilizational level, and we're talking about a demographic transformation that's occurring over generations. Does that make sense, or does that, or
yeah,
do you just want to hear
that
about
makes,
an American eats hamburgers?
Well, okay. Well, I think the place I differ here is I think that, and I would be curious to hear why exactly you feel that race is so determinate on the perpetuation of cultural values. But I would necessarily say that if someone of a different race supports all of the values that you support, and hypothetically, what if the demographics were switched? What if the only determinate variable factor was race, and all of the ideologies that these Hispanic people held, or in your opinion, were held by white people, and the values that are traditionally held by white people were held by Hispanics? Would you switch your position to support more of the Hispanics because they inherently hold the technical European culture that you necessarily support?
That is a stupid question, because then they would be Europeans. I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point is that, people are not interchangeable. That's the entire point, is that Hispanics and Europeans are not interchangeable. All the different groups of people in the world are not interchangeable. I don't believe that you can bring Mexicans over, and just because they believe the same things as us, that you're going to get the same outcomes. Because you know what? Everything south of the Rio Grande, with some exceptions, is a shithole. And where do you find the exceptions? Argentina, where they have a massive Italian and German population. Some neighborhoods in Brazil where it's the same. Just about everything south of the Rio Grande, all these countries, and you could find your, rich neighborhoods and beaches and, resorts, but you wouldn't want to be in any of these countries south of the Rio Grande. And that is because
why do you think that is?
Because they're violent, because they're poor, because they're corrupt. And you know what these societies look like? They look just like the societies that predated European colonization on this continent. And I don't think that's a coincidence. You cannot separate people's tribe from the outcomes and the nations that they create. In the same way that you get the same outcomes all throughout Latin America, you get the same outcomes all throughout Europe, you get the same outcomes all throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, you get the same outcomes throughout most of East Asia, and there's a little bit more diversity there, but the point is the same. It's that race, it's not everything, but it's not nothing. And, people seem to think it's nothing.
Specifically, what about race do you think is determinant on, for example, political values?
I think that, things like that are very subtle and nuanced. I think that, for example, when we look at the political behaviors of Europeans, Europeans were once a barbarous, primitive people. We were all primitive at one point. But, you know, for a variety of genetic factors and really through, I guess you could say, you know, this idea of like historically we sort of rose up over time, we've developed behaviors and attitudes and beliefs that are cultural and biological. And I think that, you know, both of, you know, genetic, I should say, and cultural, that have led to societies where we can have something like democracy. You know, if you look at like Latin America, one of the big problems is corruption. Or you look at some of the people that come over here from Mexico, and one problem is like, you know, maybe laziness or general impropriety, you know, a different set of expectations for themselves. And I think a lot of it is culture, but I think maybe the capacity to realize a lot of that culture can be genetic. So,
and
you know,
specifically what I'm referring to is, so for me, I am a hereditarian. I do sympathize and I understand where you're coming from. However, we can take a more nuanced look at it. So, for example, let's say look at the East Asian culture, right, which have a less corrupt system than even European countries.
True.
Most European countries. If you look at Ireland and a lot of West European countries, these are really garbage countries. Like, you don't want to live in Hungary, right?
Disagree.
Right. No, you don't.
Disagree. You're telling me what I want?
Well, look at the stats on it. It's really gross. It's a stupid pilot. Anyway, like sure, like you may want to live in like Denmark, Switzerland, but like Hungary has really bad stats.
Well, but, I mean that's kind of that's
what I'm getting at is someone's ancestral populations isn't necessarily indicative of the entire population, right? We're not going to make an ecological fallacy, right? One of the reasons why universities that literally 33% of the Black population is from Nigeria is because the American immigration system is actually supposed to take the best from the world, right? And so if America takes the best from the world, we can build up America, right?
Yeah, but well, go ahead. Are you finished?
The brain drain idea. Why would you be opposed to that?
Well, here's the reason. You know, and here's the other thing. I'm not an IQ nationalist. I think that because you're right. I mean, Asian societies in many ways, and Asians in particular, possess traits that actually lead to more successful societies, some traits, than Europeans. You know, so I'm not like a white supremacist. Oh, you know, we're the only ones that create civilization. We're the only one. You know, it's not even a question of, you know, taking the best and brightest, because I understand that point, and I think that's a fair objection. But, you know, and this is why I get back to it's a question of the social aspect. It's a question of the identity aspect. I think that, you know, let's say you swapped out America. I mean, I'm speaking in terms of Latin Americans and Africans because, you know, these are going to be the largest minority groups and are currently. But let's say you swapped out the entire population with Asians. I don't think civilization would collapse. I think that, you know, Asians are competent, and I think they possess traits that lead to successful civilizations, and there's proof of that, you know, in Japan and South Korea. But while that is the case, it wouldn't be America. I mean, what you will have created is an Asian civilization. And, you know, to me, it's not even a question so much of having, you know, the greatest civilization in the world, although I think that's what Europeans strive for. I think it's a question of, you know, having a civilization that is ours. You know, fundamentally, it's a question of, you know, I love my home, and I love my home the way it is. And if you have other people, then you don't get that.
Are you arguing for like ethno-states specifically?
No, not at all.
Like a majoritarian?
Yeah, probably something closer to that.
So that would be it. Like, for example, you would say Israel is an ethno-state, I would assume, even though it's not an ethnic ethno-state, for example. It just advances the political causes for Jews. For example, would you apply that for the United States in your vision?
I don't think it needs to be more complicated than not having demographic transformation. You know, I mean, to me, I think that it is, you know, and I don't want this to sound like a cop-out, but we're talking about like European and American civilization being completely demographically transformed. And like, do you have to put a word on that? You're a white nationalist if what? You're not in favor of 100 million more immigrants coming in the next 100 years and, you know, demographically replacing white people?
I'm not for mass immigration. I don't think that's good. Right?
I know you're not in favor of that. I'm just saying, you know, I would just say it's as simple as let's just stop bringing in immigrants and let's try to promote country that is cohesive, and I think the only way to do that is with an ethnic white core. And I don't think that, you know, I don't want to kick out all non-white people or anything like that, but
wait, Nick, what? So there are many European countries currently that are a majority white. So
correct.
I'm curious, maybe you don't. Do you believe America is better than those countries or not?
Well, I mean, I love America more because it's my home.
Why? Okay, fine. But what makes America better than a majority white nation in Europe?
Well, I think it's important to note that, you know, when we're talking about these countries, America was, you know, what was it, 90% white in the 1960s?
Just currently,
and
right now.
Moreover, well, I would say that in terms of prospects for the future, I think that European countries have a better prospect for the future. And, you know, European countries are smaller, and European countries, I think, you know, in some ways, they obviously don't have the military we have, and, you know, but I think that if you're looking at long-term stability, I look at like Black Lives Matter, I look at what's happening on the border, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, this country being the greatest country in the world has an expiration date that is approaching. So, you know, it's important to note that 50 years ago, this was 90% white country, and the 10% of blacks, I mean, they were discriminated against. And that's, I'm not saying that like that's a good thing or to justify it, but it is to say that, you know, in effect, you're talking about a massive superpower country that has, you know, virtually the same, effectively the same demographics as Europe. But I mean, we're not talking about that now.
And also, you know, this isn't just at the border. There, you know, people like, especially Latinos, are making ethnic enclaves just about everywhere in Southwest America. And these enclaves, I mean, I define a nation as its inhabitant, not by like the landmass or lines on a map or anything, okay?
Sure.
And although we may have multi-ethnicities in this country, the landmass, I don't all refer to them as being in the same nation or group of people, because I define a nation as an ethnic group.
And Nick, I know you took a 23andMe or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, me, I'm Korean. I technically have my own ethno-state, right? The great country of South Korea, right?
Mm.
Wouldn't you already have a majority? Because, for example, I do think from your definition that you would support America being a political ethno-state for the advocacy of Europeans.
I would dispute that characterization, but
sure. And it's semantic, I think. But wouldn't you say you already have an ethno-state per se, or at least a majoritarian state already? For example, if you are German or British, I'm not sure exactly what you are, but you already have countries designated for your ancestry. The United States, while it was founded by Europeans, and one of the first immigration laws was explicitly pro-European, I do think America is different than the European countries, not just because of location-wise, but because America wasn't necessary. I don't think America necessarily is bound to racial aspects or racial quotas.
Well, I mean, it doesn't.
Is this like kind of like an American exceptionalism thing? Nobody can avoid racial quotas. It's bound in our nature.
What do you mean? Like we are genetically required to quota people, or like what do you mean?
We are genetically tribalistic. We're social animals. So
obviously we have implicit bias, right? You know,
we're always going to have an.
You see all the Asian kids sitting together at the table, you know, like we do have implicit bias, right? But that doesn't mean it's a constraint. Obviously, we have, for example, we have bias for attractive people, right? Attractive people are more likely to be hired, right? Taller people are more likely to be hired or successful or whatever you say. But we're not going to base your Americanism on how hot you are, you know.
Well, I mean, if I can rebut originally, because that's not really my. I mean, I agree that we have in-group preference, but you know, the idea that like, well, you know, Germany has a homeland and Europe has a homeland. I mean, the question is about America, and you know, it's an open-ended question about whose is America, and you could say, well, you know,
right, and you've been dodging it a little bit, but
I'm not really dodging it. I'm saying that. you know, I don't want to move to Italy because I'm not Italian. I'm American. I mean, I have Italian heritage.
I don't want to move to Korea because I'm American.
Sure, but you know, but we're talking about prospectively. You know, what is America going to be, and what's going to be best for America? And I think that the best course for America is to limit and prevent this demographic transformation. And you know, maybe as a Korean or as an Asian, it would be in your interest. I'm not want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you think it would be best if Asians colonized America or something like that. But you know, it's a battle for who gets to define America's future. And I think that Hispanics defining our future would be a disaster.
If white people on average, the vast majority of Europeans in America, whether it's from influence from political ideologies, I think you would admit from Pew Research information that the vast majority of Europeans support increased immigration. So if Europeans believe that this is the future for the country, would you just disagree with your people, for example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but you would say if this matter is in the hands of the people because you're defining America as the people, the direction of the country as a whole would be going in a direction, and you would just be one of the outliers that says this is not what I want.
Well, I mean, I'm an outlier, but you know, it's really about it's less about, you know, it's sort of a complicated question because, you know, I'm not in favor of like democracy or anything, and I think that, you know, in as much as you know, we love the American people and everything, I also want what's best for America. And you know, I would say that, well, also I don't even know if it's true that the majority of I would actually contest that the majority of Americans are in favor of more immigration. I think that just about it's the opposite. I think just about every poll that's
it's a recent
done,
thing. So for example, a couple of decades ago, what you were right, but no, as of the last year, a majority of Americans, and I would assume Europeans, but I guess that could be wrong, do support increased immigration.
I don't think that's true, but I don't have it right in front of me. And I would say that historically, and I do know historically, just about every poll that's been done shows that Americans are not only not in favor of more, or well, yeah, they're not in favor of more immigration. I think that's never been a majority. But very few want to keep the status quo, and a lot of them want less immigration, specifically conservatives. And but in any case,
I will say you were right previously. It's like Republicans should obviously be for less immigration if they want to keep their political prospects, right? Like California Democrats have obviously admitted that they're using immigration so they can get more votes.
Right.
Wait. So Nick, yeah, I have a question. So if you want this to be a more majority European country, why would you be against European immigration?
Because I think that Europeans, and I literally explained this earlier.
My
Europeans
bad.
coming over here, Europeans coming over here would, I presumably vote Democrat. And so, you know, Europeans coming here now, I think would only accelerate the rate at which Democrats are going to reach this point where they can't lose, and they're going to bring over more immigrants, and those immigrants won't be from Europe. You know, they'll be from Asia and Latin America. So
you have no objection to the I guess people coming over other than the way they might possibly vote, not the same as, you know, from Latin American countries.
No, he was explaining how Nick.
What? Sorry.
How is this hard to understand? I mean, Europeans, if they came over now, are going to vote in favor of mass immigration for non-whites.
Wait,
you know,
why? Well, then why is that not happening in Europe?
It is happening in Europe.
In a lot of places, like whether it be, you know, like a lot of the Nordic countries have some of the most strict immigration policies.
That's not true. Sweden, Hungary. UK, Germany, France, Italy.
Hungary.
You know, okay, Hungary is the one exception where they have like a, you know, borderline fascist government.
Austria.
And right, Eastern Europe. We're talking about Eastern Europe. Switzerland, I don't think has extremely restricted.
Switzerland has really strict immigration.
I'm not familiar with Switzerland, but the point being is that, and moreover, you know, even if in particular these countries have strict immigration policies, they're still getting in. They're being let in the Mediterranean. They're being let in through Turkey, through Greece, obviously. And it's only up until recently that some of these countries have started to put up a resistance. But there's been legal immigration happening in Europe for decades. You know, this is a recent phenomenon. You had this giant surge because of the refugee crisis in 2015. But to say that there's not a migrant crisis in Europe, you could point out a handful of Eastern European countries, like you said, Austria, Hungary. But I mean, we're talking about the superpowers of the continent: the UK, Germany, France, Italy, up until Salvini, you know, so to say that like, oh, well, you know, Austria's letting in less immigrants, I mean, that's just disingenuous.
Okay, so would you be in favor of letting in immigrants from countries that are not, you know, incredibly pro-immigration? That would necessarily hold the similar values to you?
Swiss people, okay, look.
No, I asked Nick a question, AJ.
Swiss people who migrate.
Okay. I just asked.
I don't understand what is difficult about this. I mean, the problem is we're taking this as like immigration is a given. Immigrants coming here, they contribute nothing but problems on net.
Okay.
The benefit that they bring is marginal compared to the problems. If they come in here and they're from a non-white group, in my belief, they're challenging the identity, the historic identity of America, and they're disrupting the social fabric. If they're coming from Europe at this particular time because of the political climate in Europe and America, I think they'll vote for the party which is facilitating the aforementioned trend. I don't know why this is difficult.
Okay,
I mean,
Nick, so then would you be in favor of removing those who vote for democratic policies?
No, because they're citizens. We're talking about preventing people from coming here. Why is that a given that millions of people are coming here? It shouldn't be a given.
But why would you not take that next step?
Because they have citizenship here.
So citizenship determines if you're American?
No, it doesn't. But citizenship disallows you from deporting people.
So citizenship doesn't determine whether you're American, but you can't deport people if they're citizens because they're American. That is
the law. When you're talking about what it means to be an American, you're talking about something which is not a legal definition.
Okay.
When you're talking about citizenship, we're talking
then
about
I'm
a
asking
legal
you for
process.
your personal beliefs then.
My personal beliefs.
Legality. If you could deport people who supported like more immigration and leftist policies.
If I were in charge, there wouldn't be any voting. Let's just get that straight. We're talking about the reality that we're working with. And in my view, you know, deporting people that are citizens, that's just never going to happen. But drastically limiting immigration, I think that is in the cards.
Okay, I would contest the same way that you say deporting people who are citizens was never going to happen. I think if we're going at it from a purely practical standpoint, I don't think, you know, this, you know, complete moratorium on immigration would happen.
Well, then we just disagree on that. But there's no inconsistency.
Okay, but then if we get down to this idea, I guess so. If we're doing this for more of a thought experiment purpose and less for, you know, a feasibility legality purpose, if you were allowed to, if you were Supreme Dictator Nick Fuentes of America, would you want to remove necessarily people who supported policies?
I don't debate hypotheticals. I think that's ridiculous.
You think that's ridiculous?
I'm not interested in hypotheticals.
Well, hypotheticals allow us to like judge your like logical train of thought. Like,
oh, really? No, I think it's uninteresting, and I think it's unimportant what I would do. Because if I were in charge, things would be so drastically different. And you know, if we're talking about the hypothetical, I would have to assess, you know, our security posture and like, you know, the military and the police, and you know, there would be a lot of things.
I'm interested in hearing all about that.
Yeah. We're just interested. You know, I don't understand why we can't argue with the facts. What is? Let me just ask you straight up. What are you getting at with a question like that? I'm just curious.
What am I getting at? I'm genuinely curious. If you have
what hypothetically I would do if I ran the country, that sounds like remarkably irrelevant for the debate we're in.
Well, no, it's not remarkably irrelevant because you're pushing for policies that would support your type of ideology being in the White House.
This has nothing to do with
ideally
ideology.
Correct.
This has nothing to do with ideology.
Well,
and
no,
we're talking about policy. We're talking about issues. We're talking about policy.
So you would want your policies to be
and my policy is not removing people that are citizens. So
okay, so you would never support that type of policy.
No.
Okay.
That's like we just need to understand. Like we're gonna go in a policy like debate, right? Which is what this is, right?
You're just baiting me. I mean, let's just stop
not baiting at all.
You could do this thing and say, oh no, I'm not asking a leading question. Oh no, I'm not possibly implying.
I'm genuinely wondering.
You
said you wouldn't remove people who are legal citizens because they're legal citizens.
Yeah, correct.
You know, that's circular.
Because that is against the law. You know,
laws stem from morals. You want to make immigrants
incoherent.
Legal. You want to change the law.
And you're asking a leading question based on something that I'm not saying. We're talking about millions of people coming here every year, and you're asking me questions about removing citizens because they don't vote a certain way. I'm in favor of stopping this demographic transformation, and that's it. Okay.
What I'm.
Are you an immigrant, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
Am I an immigrant?
What's your background?
We're all immigrants. But
what's your background?
What's my background? I am German and Irish and Scottish.
Okay, so then why? So what's your problem? You think that we're going to create a great nation out of all these people throughout the world? Do you think that it's going to be the same nation? You know, let me just start asking you questions. You think we can
ask me questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
You think we can replace this population with a different population from another race from other countries?
What do you mean by replace?
You know what replace means?
Well, yeah. Well, no. I want to know specifically. You're talking about like bringing in other types of people that would necessarily not directly be identical to our current demographic.
You understand what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying. So, do you think that we can replace this population with a different population and get the same outcome?
To an extent, assimilation, yes. Replacement and assimilation are different, in my opinion. I believe that America is not specific to any type of race or group of people.
Really?
I think America is a shared. I think America is a shared set of values.
I think that's bullshit, and I think that every other country in the world isn't like that. I think that every other country in the world.
Well, yes, every other country is not like that.
And I think that America is no different. And I think that the values America expresses are unique and exclusive to the people that generated them. Why is it that no other country in the world has done similarly? Why is it that Haiti got independence around the same time that we did, and they are the poorest and one of the worst countries in the world, and the same can be said about all the Central and South American countries too.
Wait, if you're gonna bring up Haiti, you have to understand that these people that revolted weren't like the Americans that revolted. You know, like what's their names, like the founding fathers, right? Like the people in Haiti were genuine slaves. Like it was a slave revolt. It was not a revolt of the populace, right? Like saying, oh, they got their independence around the same time. Discounts anything. America's a larger country when we got independence. We were like literally the state of New York is probably just as large.
They eat mud. They eat mud. They eat mud.
Yeah, guess why? Because when French colonized them, they would literally like exploit the land
every rationalization.
Let me finish. And when the Haitians revolted, when the Haitian slaves revolted, the land was already like so bad because the French were using it all up.
Like your only argument.
And that happened in every single sub-Saharan African country.
Okay, what?
Yeah, it's called dividing the African cake.
The same sub-Saharan. Okay, let's go to Algeria, right? My home country, right? This is a country that you're talking about that has been literally like the best definition of it would be raped and pillaged by the French, right? You're talking about like they took our resources, they cut down all the trees that we had, which led to a high desertification. They used our minimal arable land, which we had not much of, right? And they overused it, overfarmed it, right? They built roads and built communities, right? Which was great, but it was only for them. Right, it was only for the elite French and the elite Jews, the elite French Jews that were there, right, and the elite French in general, right? Like this idea of saying, "Oh, they eat mud." All you're doing, Nick, is just screaming something for your fan base. When in reality, guess what?
I'm not screaming it for my fan base. It's not. You're totally missing the point. You're totally missing the point. You don't live in reality. You live in the reality where we're going to bring in people from mud countries and they're going to land on the moon.
Mud countries. Why are they mud countries?
Because they eat fucking mud and they live in mud. They live in squalor.
Why are they mud
countries?
That's a difference. Why are they mud countries?
They're mud countries because they've always been mud countries. They were mud countries when we got into the interior of Africa in the 19th century. They didn't have a written language. They didn't have a two-story building. They hadn't discovered the wheel. And you think that's what all the oppression they experienced without European contact?
If you've never seen a two-story building, I doubt you'll be able to build one.
Nick, when you look at time, do you know the number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? You know those numbers? Do you know what they're called?
Yeah, I understand. I understand
the
proud Arabic history. Right. Tell me about the Islamic Golden Age.
Yeah, the Islamic Golden Age. Yeah. The House of Babylon, the House of Wisdom. Right.
Yeah. And now they don't shit in toilets. So what does that say?
Nick. What about the most infamous library? Do you think it's in Berlin or it's in Paris? Do you know where the most infamous library of history is?
Tell me where.
Alexandria, Egypt. Wow. Before it was burned down.
Alexandria, Egypt. You're gonna take credit for Alexandria. Who is Alexandria named after? Do you know?
It was after it was named. That's
I think that was before the Arabs got there. Just saying. I think Egypt existed before
Alexander
the
the
Arabs.
Great?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that existed
Alexander
before.
I mean, he was
Alexander
gay,
the
so
Great
I don't
renamed
know.
Alexander the Great renamed it after he burned down the library there.
But point being, you're trying to take credit. This is worse than
what about one of the richest empires in human history?
The Mali Empire.
Give me a break. That is the biggest crock of shit.
The richest man.
The historiography on that is so weak. That is the biggest African cope. I'm sure that came out of some Black Studies department 25 years ago.
The richest man in history.
Bunch of bullshit. Yeah, Mansa Musa, give me a break.
I'm
They were so rich. That's why they're
Nick,
they don't have a wheel, right?
Nick. So far, I'm trying to understand your point here, but all you've been saying is, "Oh, give me."
You're not trying to understand. You're not trying to. You're not trying to understand.
No, MJ honestly is trying to understand everything.
He's showing porn. Kick Dylan Klebold.
Yeah, just kick him.
Kick him.
Why is Corn not doing this now?
Mansa Musa, give me what a cope.
Yo, give me cope.
Dude, man,
we was kings. We was kings.
He was rich. He was rich when he went
to Venice. He literally spent so much money. He caused runaway inflation in the city for 5 years.
According to whom?
According to whom? According to the historians of Venice that wrote about it.
Right. I'm sure the historiography on that is perfectly sound.
I'm sure. How do you know, Nick? Like what?
Because that's such because all that stuff this is because you guys don't get it. All of that stuff is just a giant cope. The idea, because the idea is absurd on its face. That you would have the richest man in the world. Oh, he was so rich, he crashed the economy. So rich that there's no historical record for like any tribe in Africa.
What about algebra? What about algebra?
What about it?
That's obvious. That's obvious. Algebra was created by the Arabs.
I'm not talking shit about the Arabs. I'm talking shit about Haitians. I will concede that Arabs.
So you're saying Haitians. You're saying Haitians are in the position that they are because of themselves, right? And not because of actually being slaves and having their land.
Correct. Why were they slaves? Were they? Wow, I guess God created the world, and the Haitians were created eating mud. Or do you think that everything has an origin?
The Haitians were slaves. The Haitians were simply slaves just because the white Europeans were able to conquer them.
How? How did they conquer them? How did they conquer them? They were so rich and intelligent. How did they conquer them? Or do you mean to say because they had muskets and they were fighting against people with bows and arrows and spears?
They had muskets. Guess where gunpowder came from? Fucking Asia.
I love how we have the multiracial Zoom call. So everyone's going to take credit for their invention. Well, who built the muskets?
Hispanic, Nick. I'm literally.
Okay. Oh yeah. All right. You got me. Right. Well, Europeans didn't invent everything. You're right. Europeans didn't invent everything.
My family is from
what's your background?
My background. Proudly.
Guys. Hey, guys. No 5 people coming at it at the same time.
Nick. My family comes from Spain and Mexico, my guy.
Okay. My family comes from Italy, Ireland, Spain. And so there's some native in there too.
There's a lot of race mixing in there, my guy. That's pretty degenerate.
I don't think there's any race mixing really. I mean, with the exception of probably
you're a bastard child. You're a bastard.
Maybe many generations.
Nick, are you telling me you're a race mixer?
Why are you trying to get under my skin with that? It's very interesting. I thought we were just asking questions.
That's not productive.
It's almost like there is a racial insecurity on your part, and you're attacking me on the grounds of my racial purity. I'm literally a part of your race,
my guy.
I know, and for some reason this conversation makes you very uncomfortable and is maybe awakening a racial consciousness within you. Maybe it's an anti-white consciousness. You can laugh about it, but
kind of off topic. But are you Hispanic or a Spaniard ethnically?
Well, there's both.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Continue.
I know you're just asking another question.
Pick Daniel Sadams. He's showing porn.
I can't see that. I'm playing Civ 5, but it's very interesting how quickly this became racialized, and how all these enlightened people, all these enlightened anti-racist, individualists, libertarians, taunting me, Wait. No, I'm not. Wait. I'm not mad. I'm chill. What I'm noting, what I'm observing, which I think you're panicking because this is true, is that you are trying to taunt me on the basis of race, and I think that is because on some level you're laughing at this, but it's totally true.
I don't agree what they did was right or productive.
Because you're sort of defending, and this guy with the
I'm
Arab
not
numerals.
defending anything.
No,
I'm
not
just
you,
saying
not
I
you.
think-
The Algerian defending the Arab numerals. It's almost like there is an intrinsic grievance against Europeans in there.
What is he
talking about the
defending?
rape.
He's just stating a fact.
Excuse me. Talking about the rape of Algeria by France sounds like racial grievance to me, which is weird because I thought I was with all these pink on the inside libertarian individuals.
I don't blame the French for what they did. I blame the specific people for what they did.
That's not what it sounds like. That's not what it sounds like, my guy. My guy, that's not what it sounds like, right? Right? It's not right. It sounds like right. My guy, it sounds like racial grievance.
Nick, I 100% don't blame the French people, the current French people, for what they did. What I blame right now is the French government at the time that decided it was okay to go and pillage my home country, Nick. And it's the same thing that you're arguing now, right? Like it's this idea
What
that
am I arguing?
Like what you're trying to say here is you're saying, you have some sort of racial grievance against the French. When in reality, that's completely far from the truth. I just made a little joke and you got a little offended. It's okay, man. It's 100% okay.
Well, why did you get
okay.
offended?
It was just a little joke.
Why did you get offended when I was talking? I didn't get offended. I don't get offended by anything. I don't understand why you taunted me on the basis of race after you yourself got offended on the basis of race. Because I thought,
How did I get
race
offended on the
isn't real.
basis of race, man?
Because we were talking about Haiti. Talking about Haiti being, colonized, eating mud, and now you're talking about Alexandria and Roman numerals, and my
because I was trying to no. You don't get to say that I'm offended on something when I was just trying to disprove a point.
That.
Nick, what you've been saying here, right? So your premise, right? So just to crack down this debate for a bit for you, because I think you've missed it, right?
I think you're the one missing it.
The simple premise, Nick. The simple premise.
I'm right here.
Yeah, I understand, but I need to repeat myself, otherwise you won't let me talk. The simple premise here, right, is that what you're trying to say is these people, right, the Haitian people, etc., and all these different, like, non-American, non-white groups, right, they're shit because they are non-American, non-white, right? What I'm trying to understand here is I'm trying to tell you it's because of external factors. And I brought up Haiti, and I brought up the external factors there, right? And you said, no, they eat mud, right? So what I did is I then turned around and I brought up other groups, right, that are non-white, that are non-American, that are non-cultural, and
the Egyptians were white.
These are groups. So. Wait, one sec. The Egyptians are what now?
Yes,
the Egyptians were white, so.
And Egyptians, we found that they have white ancestry, a European ancestry.
Yeah, correct. The Arabs
colonized.
Egyptians
were European.
The Arabs colonized the Maghreb. If you don't know this, I mean, you're just historically illiterate. That's not my fault. Do you honestly believe that the Egyptians? Do you believe that the Egyptians that built the pyramids were Arabs?
The Egyptians were one of the 4 original, first societies, right? The Indus, the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians on the Nile, and then
World History 101.
Yeah, it's basic history. I really don't understand how somebody with the grandeur of Mr. Nicholas Fuentes here doesn't understand basic history.
I think you're talking about brown skin.
Literally had European DNA.
You're talking about brown-skinned Egyptians building the pyramids and the Library of Alexandria. I think you're the confused one, my friend.
First of all, the Library of Alexandria also contributed to by the Arabs, but that's a different point. Also, we can also talk about the House of Babylon, if you want to.
What about
we can talk about the House of Babylon. The Babylon.
Do you think those were Arabs too, or how illiterate are you?
Do we want to talk about how?
Regardless, what I'm saying is that they're non-white, right? What I'm saying is that they're non-white, non-American, non-European.
Do we want to talk about how the Muslims beat the Christians and those fucking the Crusades?
Why is
or
that?
Or do you want to talk about Arabic numerals, which you, by the way, you said that I'm getting all.
Dude, oh my, dude.
I don't know. I don't know who's who. All you guys sound like soy boys to me. But
if
you want to talk about like Muslims beating Christians, are you kidding me? Christians destroyed Muslims.
I'm literally agnostic.
Christians destroyed Muslims. Yeah, we lost a couple of wars or battles, I guess you could say. But
you lost like most of them, my guy.
Who won the war, my guy? How many Muslims are there versus how many Christians?
You've only lost.
That's why Islam is
we only created the civilization that defined the last half millennium. I guess that's a nice consolation.
The Christians only won one war, and you lost the rest of them.
Are you kidding me? We won history, my friend, my guy.
Oh, it's this man, bro.
Christians, dude. What year are we living in? What year are we living in? 2020? What? 2020 years since what? Since Muhammad? Since
you're
gonna tell me the Muslim one? Give me a break.
God. I don't believe in your God.
Yeah, you're going to hell.
Doesn't matter if you don't believe in God.
That's a false assertion because like Muslims, we don't base our like calendar based on our prophet.
This guy's a Muslim.
Yes, I am a Muslim. Yes. we don't base our like calendar based on our like.
Is that why? Is that why? Is that why?
Yes, that's why.
Tell me more about Algeria. Tell me more about why don't you tell me more about the Sykes-Picot Agreement? Do we really want to talk about Muslims versus Christians? Do we really want to bring up the scoreboard on that one?
Muslims took a big.
By the way, if you really want to go into that, the number 2020, where did that come from?
Oh no! You got me. No, you're right. You're right.
Tell me, where did the number 2020 come from?
No, you got me. The Arabic numerals. Arab strike again. Another Arab victory.
Nick, I'm gonna ask you. Look, man. I know this might be hard for you, but x plus 4 equals 16.
Nothing's hard for
Can
me.
you
I'm
solve
a
it for me?
genius.
X plus 4 equals 16. Can you solve it for me, please?
Oh, you're gonna do algebra now? Is that?
Oh
is
yeah,
that
that's
that
algebra.
Is?
Oh wait, that's ours as well. Oh, Nick.
Well, how much? Wait. Can we count that?
Nick,
can we count that on more than one hand?
Nick, do you know what pi equals?
Yeah.
Nick,
we know.
do you know what pi equals?
Yeah,
do you know what pi equals?
Yeah, we know.
3.14.
Oh, okay. Y'all invented
Sharia
law too, so shut the fuck up.
Yo, Sharia law is base, dude.
Okay,
that's the one good thing
who lost most of the crusade? Christian.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of cope to me. Sounds like we're all speaking English. We're all living on this American continent that white people built.
French and Arabic if you want.
We don't care, Muslim. We don't care. Why don't you wipe your ass with your hands?
Arabic, and then nobody will understand you because we all speak English.
Yeah, because we live in America, bitch.
We live in America.
Fake American detective. I got
Let's see the finger guns, Nick.
We're on a foreigner hunt, and don't think we don't know how to weed them out, bitch. America first.
Oh my God, man.
Rooted out, and clocked.
I'll admit, Nick. You've got a good personality. I'll give you that.
Thank you. You got a good personality. It's all fun. We're all it's banter.
This man Nick off the goop for that one.
It's just banter.
Until my college finds that I'm talking to Nick and everyone hates his guts.
No, don't tell him.